is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 623. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you ready to do some rare and mythic rare action today?
Totally. This is actually one of my favorite shows because just the cards tend to be on the more interesting side, and it's cool to talk about the corner cases and, you know, all that. Also, it's an excuse to talk about these rares, which we don't have as much during the course of the normal show since they don't tend to have a huge influence on specific archetypes and whatnot. So,
that's right.
Yep. Definitely ready to blast through some rares. It should be a lot of fun.
That's right. We've got the Crimson Vow set review. This is the Mythic Rare and Rare edition of it. We're going to go through every single one of them here on this episode. Before we do, let's talk about our sponsors. ChannelFireball.com. That's the place to go for all things Magic related. You know, they moved over to a marketplace now. If you haven't been to CFB in a little bit and you search up some singles, you'll realize that now instead of just showing the cards that they have in stock specifically at Channel Fireball, now instead it's a marketplace. So it's like an aggregator for people who sell Magic cards, which means you get a ton more selection. You can compare prices and conditions right there on the spot, but you still get that familiar Channel Fireball customer experience where, you know, you're using their site. And of course, you know that they're a trusted place to go to buy and even to sell your card. So make sure that you check them out. The marketplace is the big new thing over there. While you're there, you can check out CFB Pro and any number of other things going on, including stuff for other games. If you're into Flesh and Blood or Pokemon, they've got stuff, content and cards and everything there as well. It really is your one-stop shop for everything trading, collectible trading card game related. And we certainly hope you'll check them out. If you do, if you use the checkout code or the promo code, wait, what is it called? Affiliate code?
Affiliate code.
My affiliate code. There it is. It's LR at checkout. That lets them know that we sent you over there. And I appreciate it if you would do that. It helps out the show. The show's also brought to you by FTX. That's the place to go for all of your digital assets. If that sounds weird to you, you should probably start getting more used to it as time goes forward. Things like cryptocurrency, NFTs, and other new types of products that are based on blockchain technology are really starting to move forward. A lot of interesting space to go still for blockchains. We still don't really know where everything's going to land with it. It's early days, but, you know, most people think that it is moving in a direction that is going to be part of our daily lives in some way or another. And if you want to get in on it early, FTX is the secure, safe, regulated place to go for it. If you're US based, it's ftx.us. If you're outside the US, it's ftx.com. And, yeah, you can go check it out and, you can see how it all works and kind of dive into that world. I will remind you though, that this is investing, right? And investing carries with it risks. And as such, you should always make sure that you're as educated as you can possibly be on it. And that usually means consulting some type of investment professional before doing so. And of course, you know, Luis and I are certainly not that. And so you should make sure to do so before you do. But when you're ready, ftx.com and ftx.us will be there for you. Last but not least, the Patreon, patreon.com/limited resources. That's the place to go if you want to support the show directly. If you sign up on the Patreon, you'll get a thank you card and a sticker in the mail, no matter which level you're at. And we really appreciate everybody over on the Patreon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Luis, before we get into the actual cards, we are going to be giving these a grade, and well, there's going to be a lot fewer C's given out on this one than on the last episode.
Yeah, so when we discuss the cards, kind of what we say in the review is going to inform you most on how the card's used, its pluses and minuses and all that. But we do give it a grade at the end, as you say, a punctuation mark, and so you can kind of more easily compare the cards to each other and see kind of where we stand. We have to pick an actual spot to land on for each of these cards. The way the grades are going to work is we're going to give out A's to the best cards in the set. These are the bombs, the game winners, the cards that are awesome in many different situations, especially when behind, and the cards that just take over a game. So we're talking cards like Mythic Massacre and Grafted Identity. You're going to see a lot of A's in the rare category. Of course, that's where they tend to live. B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors, cards that you're very happy to take early and very happy to see in your deck. So we're talking cards like Morbid Opportunist, Organ Hoarder, Clear Shot, and a fair amount of B's in this category as well. C's are kind of like the mid-range playables, the pawns of limited, the cards that you're not like thrilled about, but you do have to play because it's limited. You have a certain amount of these cards in your deck every time. Not too many rares in this category, and we're talking cards like Hobbling Zombie, Harvesttide Sentry, Moonrager Slash. These are cards that are sometimes playable, but you'd really prefer not to run them. These are your cards that are slightly too clunky, a mana too overcosted, maybe a point of toughness or power too small. So we're talking cards like Shady Traveler, Devious Cover-Up, Sun Gold Barrage, and you're going to see a decent amount of Ds in here because the rares tend to often kind of cluster on the two poles, and that leads us to Fs. Fs are the cards that are just straight up unplayable. Cards that cost like 12 mana, cards that have clearly no effect or only refer to legendary cards. So we're talking cards like Stuffed Bear is a good example of a card that everyone wanted to love, but we could not endorse. And then there's two subgrades. There's Sideboard, cards that you wouldn't start but can be good out of the board. You expect to see 0 to 1 sideboard cards in the Rare and Mythic review. That's just not how these cards tend to land. But we will see a fair amount of build-arounds. These are cards that by themselves don't do it, but can be quite effective when paired with the right cards. Think of cards that incentivize you for playing enchantments or artifacts or creatures of all the same type, that sort of thing. So we're going to go ahead and hop into the Rare and Mythic review, and those are the grades we'll be using.
That's right. We're going to start with blue this time, and our first, which we did on the Commons and Uncommons episode. Our first rare is called Jacob Hauken Inspector. So, not a lot of crazy flavor going on here, but let's see what Jacob's up to. 1 and a blue for a 0/2 legendary human advisor. This is a mythic rare, by the way. Jacob has an activated ability, tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may pay 4 blue. If you do, transform Jacob Hauken Inspector, and Jacob becomes Hauken's Insight, which is actually a legendary enchantment. So kind of interesting. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. So it gives you that ability just for free at the beginning of your upkeep. Once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among the cards exiled with this permanent without paying its mana cost. Woo!
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jacob here. You've got early game, it's a looter, right? A 2-mana O2 looter. And slightly worse because you're exiling instead of discarding, so you're not getting the full value. Of course, the reason you're doing that is because the backside keys off those cards you exiled. But what happens here is if your opponent can't deal with this, on turn 6, you almost always want to just flip him because you can immediately play whatever the best card is that you looted away earlier. And that's usually going to be worth somewhere close to 6 mana because you're probably pitching something big. And then every turn after that, it effectively draws you an extra card and gives you a bunch of mana to play that card with. So a really powerful card here, and one that does demand answering pretty quickly once you hit 6 mana. Of course, that makes it a little slow. But you also only invested 2 mana in this, and it still increases your it filters your draws early. So a lot to love about Jacob Hauken here.
And you can just... You can just pay the 6 mana whenever you want.
Well, whenever you resolve his ability, yes.
Okay, so you do have to at least untap with him.
Correct.
So we can't do the thing where we set up like 8 mana, cast him, transform him. That's not a thing.
No, he's gonna give you a turn delay no matter what. But I still don't think that keeps Jacob Hauken from being an A. It's a 2-mana card that will win the game basically by itself, and there's no real risk involved either because they can never make you waste the 6 mana. If they want to kill it, they have to kill it in response to you tapping him, at which point you don't spend the 6 mana. Once you spend the 6 mana, he just straight up transforms.
Yeah.
Obviously, they could have like enchantment removal, but that's not something that's going to happen all that often.
Okay, so you like A for Jacob Hauken Inspector.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it doesn't get much cleaner than that. Like, it's just a really powerful card for 2 mana that, can take over a game and doesn't require much investment.
I think the most important thing you said there was for 2 mana, right? That's the reason why this card gets such a high grade is that you're only investing a tiny, virtually every game that you play where this is in your hand, you will get to cast it. That's not true for every A that
you won't always get to 6 to flip it. And of course, that's where a lot of the power is. But when we look at in mana investment, we're not just talking about how much the card costs to fully utilize the card. They have to interact with it when you've spent 2, not when you've spent 6.
Yep.
And that's a pretty big upside.
So A for Jacob Hauken Inspector, cool card too. This is a good start. Because this isn't the type of card that just hits you over the head, right? Where, we call those rate monsters, right? Where they're just like, let's pump up all the numbers. This is actually an interesting card. Next one is Patchwork Crawler. This is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 zombie horror, and it's rare. It has an activated ability. You can pay 2 and a blue and exile target creature card from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on this guy. And Patchwork Crawler has all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with it.
Not too impressed with this one. If you look at the cards in the set and how many have actual activated abilities, it's negligible. Okay. So this is basically just worse than a 2-mana 1/2 that says 3, put a +1/+1 counter on me, right? And that card wouldn't be one that we would be super impressed with.
I think I would play that one.
Yeah, you'd play it, but it's not an exciting card. Like, it's not great on turn 2. It's okay in the later stages of the game, but it's not a card that you're really dying to run in your deck.
So what do you want to give it? Let's assume that we can get. Let's just assume that we'll always have 2 or 3 creatures in our graveyard, so that we're building around this effectively. What would you give it in that scenario?
Like a C. I mean, it's a 2-mana 1/2. You can pay 3 to put a counter on it, and you won't even always have fodder for it.
I think I would give that a B. Right? I mean,
no way.
So if I just told you, hey, there's an uncommon from the set, it's 2-mana 1/2, you can pay 3 mana to put a counter on it, you would just be like, eh?
I think that would be a playable card. It wouldn't be an exciting one, though. Like, okay. How much mana would you have to invest before you're happy with it? If you spend 8 mana, you get a 3/4.
Yeah, I think that's the point at which I'm like, okay, I'm kind of doing it. And then, of course, you just have this, again, in our theoretical world here, you can just, dump 6 mana into it, and all of a sudden it's a problem.
But you're going to run out of fodder for this, too.
No, I know. I was trying to say, if it wasn't that, then where would it be?
No, but this requires creatures in the graveyards.
Thank you, Luis. Yes. Yeah, and this one you will absolutely. It is your graveyard only as well, so there's going to be a lot of times when you just run out. So what do you want to give it then? You've definitely talked me down, but I was higher to start with. I would still say like a C+ for Patchwork Crawler.
I think it's just a C. I think that I think you're just not going to be that impressed with it. I mean, there's just not that many cards that have cool activated abilities, so you're not really getting too much value out of that. It's a fine card, but it's not an exciting one.
I mean, we're only 2 cards into the set, and we already have a combo set up here, Luis. Like, what do you?
True enough.
Jacob Hawkins. Although, what would happen if you paid the 6?
Nothing. It just can't transform into nothing. So,
maybe a
real good combo.
All right. Next is, we'll just move on. Cemetery Illuminator, another mythic rare. This one's 1 blue for a 2/3 spirit with flying. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. That's pretty powerful in sets like this. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. And once each turn, you may cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with a card exiled with Cemetery Illuminator. That's cool. Yeah, so creature is kind of where we want to be, right?
I mean, ultimately, this is going to just do it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cool things is, so you play it, it enters the battlefield, but you get to look at the top card of your library before you choose what to exile. So you because it's any time, it doesn't use the stack or anything. So you're like, all right, I'm going to play this before I choose a target. I guess I'll look. I believe that's how it works. This is kind of weird timing. But either way, you also get, when you attack and get to exile, you definitely have that knowledge. And you're like, okay, so, I've got a spell on top, so I should exile an instant because my top card's an instant. And it doesn't let you play lands because you have to cast the spell. But this is a 3-mana 2/3 flying that messes with their graveyard and draws you an extra card, like, I would say more than every other turn. So yeah, that's a pretty big game for 3 mana.
This thing's awesome for 3 mana. Yeah, the wording is interesting on this, right? It says whenever it ETBs or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Right? Which is not the same thing as target card, which would require you to choose that when it goes on the stack, right? So this.
Oh, that's also true. Yes, you definitely get to look at it.
So this makes me think that you definitely get to look.
100%. And also, they don't know what you're targeting until the ability resolves, which is cool.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So anyway, and this card just seems awesome. Again, these efficient cards that are, it's already a 2/3 for 3 with flying that you're okay with. And then the ETB ability is relevant in sets like this. And then you just get this avalanche of possible value off of it. I love Cemetery Illuminator.
Yeah, Cemetery Illuminator looks like an A to me as well. It does. It's a 3-mana 2/3 flyer that draws extra cards. What else could you really ask for?
What do you want, right? What do you want from us? This is what you get. So an A for Cemetery Illuminator. Next is Dream Shackle Geist. This is 1 blue for a 3/1 flying spirit at rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1. You tap target creature, or target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Dang.
Yeah, Dream Shackle Geist is a beating. So when you're aggressive, you can just play this, tap one of their things, and start attacking in. Even when you're defensive, though, like they've attacked you, you play this and then just lock down one of their creatures. And in both cases, you've got a 3/1 flyer that's probably getting in there.
And so does the timing work that you could keep one thing tapped down perpetually?
Yeah, you won't be able to tap it, then tap it down.
Right.
But if let's say they had a tapped 4/4, you'd play this, beginning of combat, it doesn't untap. On their turn, it doesn't untap. And on your next turn, you just continue choosing that mode.
I mean, geez.
The only downside here is that it's a 1 toughness card, but that's, dies to removal is not the like most compelling argument. And I would say Dream Shackle Geist it gets an A-. Like it's a card that's going to give you a pretty significant combat advantage as long as it's in play, and it's a 3-mana 3/1 to boot.
I think I would give it an A. The Cemetery Illuminator has this long-term potential to just dominate if it's not dealt with. But Dream Shackle Geist gives you right now, right? Like you play it, you go to combat, and this is Dungeon Geist, right? It has the same power and it can lock down a creature. Now, it doesn't work the exact same way, but the way I see it is if they have a tapped creature that you want to keep tapped, well, it is that way, right? As long as this is on the board, you can make sure that it doesn't get tapped down. But if they are on the defensive and you play this and tap down their best blocker and then get in for an attack, sure, they get to untap their creature, but what are they going to do? Attack you with it, right? Like the whole point was that you were able to lock down, get their blocker out of the way. So if they just pass the turn back again, you can just simply tap down that creature again and effectively have removed it from its job. I really like that. The only knock on it is the 1 toughness, but as you said, it's still going to take a card most likely to get it off the battlefield. So I would give A to Dream Shackle Geist. That seems like a 3-mana Dungeon Geist or something to me.
Yeah, it's quite strong. Yeah, I'm good for A for Dream Shackle Geist.
Geralf Visionary Stitcher. This was our preview card. It's 2 and a blue for a 1/4 legendary human wizard at rare. It gives your zombies flying, and you can pay blue, tap it, and sacrifice another non-token creature to create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacked creature's toughness. And of course, it would have flying as well.
Yeah, another great card. Geralf is immediately going to have an impact because you've got probably other zombies in your deck. So then they now have flying, can maybe get in there. And then it lets you turn all your high toughness creatures into just XXs. So this is a combo with like the Undead Phalanx, the 113. And also all these creatures have flying. So you can even just turn a 4/4 into a 4/4 flyer. So pretty good value. It's also a 3-mana 1/4. So it's not the easiest to kill. And again, you're not spending tons of mana on it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I just like A for Geralf as well. It's a card that in most decks, it's got a little build around aspect, but not even that much because all it requires is creatures. It makes its own zombies. So in most decks, if your opponent has a Geralf in play, you're not going to be too thrilled about the situation. I would imagine it's a card they have to deal with.
Works well with Disturb too, right?
Yeah, lets you sack the creature and get value from it, and then you get to flash the Disturb part back for whatever the effect that is.
Right.
Also, it's good in the exploit deck just because the exploit deck's going to have creatures that are good to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So it kind of plays into the normal themes. So blue's starting off pretty strong here.
Yeah, I think I like A- for Geralf Visionary Stitcher. What do you think?
Yeah, I could buy that. This is the most narrow of the ones we've seen so far. Mm-hmm. Every single blue deck will play all the other cards, minus the patchwork one that we talked about. Whereas an 8 creature deck is not going to look at Geralf and think, this is what I need.
Right. Wow, these are crazy too because these are all cheap. Like we haven't even gone above 3 mana yet. My God. Inspired Idea is next. This is 2 and a blue for a sorcery at rare, and it says draw 3 cards. And then it has Cleave for 3 blue, and it says draw 3 cards. Your maximum hand size is reduced by 3 for the rest of the game. So if you pay the 3 mana, you get the 3 cards, but your hand size is reduced. If you pay the 5, you just draw 3 cards.
I like this card. I think both modes are going to be pretty strong. I think you're not going to cleave it very often. And the reason is you probably don't want to cast card draw until you kind of run out of other stuff to do. That typically the play pattern with card draw is you don't cast it on turn 3 unless you're going to like miss a land drop, right? But what you're going to do is play your creature, and then when your hand's empty, you refill. Which means that even if you could cast the cleave, if I have 2 cards in hand and 6 mana, I'm just going to play this for 3 mana because it only punishes if you end the turn with 5 cards in hand.
Right.
And that's just not going to happen very often once you go down below that in the end of the game. How else are you getting your hand full all of a sudden? So mostly it's a 3 mana draw 3, which is a great card. I would give Inspired Idea a B+, and yeah, be on the lookout for when you should cleave it, but most of the time I don't think you're even going to have to.
So the one question I have though is you brushed over it, but isn't part of the reason why a 3 mana draw 3 is such a great card is because you can use it to hit your land drops, and this kind of works against you? Not that you wouldn't hit your land drops, but you know, if you fire this off on turn 3 after only hitting lands, you're discarding a lot. Like that's not a great scenario.
Yeah, it doesn't that part of the card doesn't play well. Like it doesn't serve the like, I have a divination, I'm going to use this to hit my 4th land drop after I missed it on turn 4 or whatever.
And that's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, that is part of why we play cards like divination, not just to refill in the late game.
Yeah, that is a drawback to the card, but you know, if you have to, you have to. Obviously, it's not great to do that, and most of the time, you're going to be able to do something else instead.
Okay, I like B for Inspired Idea. You said B+?
I like B+ for it.
All right, they just had you at draw 3 cards. Winged Portent is next. This is 1 blue. For an instant, it's rare. It says draw a card for each creature with flying you control, and you can cleave it for 4 green-blue, so 6 mana total. And then it's just draw a card for each creature you control.
I don't really like either of these modes.
I don't either. Why is this even a thing?
And this is some kind of like wacky constructed combo card. Okay. I honestly just want to give this an F because I don't want to spend 3 mana to draw a card for each flyer because you're going to need 3 flyers in play before you really feel like you got a good deal. Because don't look at it as like, oh, well, 2 flyers, it's passable. Because if you put it in your deck with a bunch of flyers, sometimes you'll draw it with 0 or 1 flyers. This card's awful.
Right.
So it needs to reward you, not just break even some of the time. And then the 6 mana version is just not a card I'm that interested in casting. 6 mana is a lot. And
it's a ton.
And you're going to end up in a spot where you spend 6 mana and take your turn off. And yeah, you might draw 4 cards, but again, it requires a lot of creatures in play. I think you're best served just not putting this card in your deck.
I would give Winged Portent an F. It's also a rich get richer card, right? Like,
definitely.
Yeah, which is not like you want cards that are good when you're behind, and this one's horrendous. Consuming Tide is next. This is 2 blue for a sorcery at rare. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you.
Yeah, I think they might have accidentally slipped this one in from the commander portion of the set.
It does feel very multiplayer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one either. So the best case scenario is you cast this, you both bounce something and you draw a card. And like you can get slight edges where it's like, I'm bouncing a thing with an ETB and they're bouncing a 5 mana play because that's all they have in play or something, or they have a token in play. But imagine the cases when you don't draw a card, which is just going to happen some of the time. That's just abysmal. Like you're just going to spend 4 mana to make you both bounce a card.
Well, it's really bouncing multiple cards, right? Like they choose one thing, you choose one thing, and everything else goes to your hands.
Oh, I reversed it. Okay.
So how does that work then? Like, how do you break that symmetry?
But the thing is, you're not even really getting that much of an edge out of it because they're let's say it's like a Wrath, except their stuff goes back to their hand. Your stuff goes back to your hand. Then they just replay their stuff.
Exactly. And you might get a card out of it. I guess, would you bring this in against a heavy tokens deck?
Yeah, but that's not really a thing.
No, not at all. Yeah, I don't think Consuming Tide is good. I'm trying to find even a narrow case where I think, oh, here you go. And I'm not even finding that. Yeah, so I think I'm not going to play Consuming Tide.
I'm on F for this one too.
Yeah.
It's better than I first thought on first read, but but it's still not great. Like if you got to choose like for each other, then maybe that'd be kind of interesting, but still not a card I'm really interested in putting in my deck.
Yeah. So F for Consuming Tide. Wow. Blue really fell off here. Let's see if they can get back on track with Mirror Hall Mimic. This is 3 and a blue for a 0/0 spirit. It's rare. It says you may have Mirror Hall Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except its spirit in addition to its other types. So that's pretty cool. We got a 4 mana clone. I mean, this is as close as you're going to get to OG clone. And these type of cards generally do very well in limited. This one also happens to have Disturb for 3 blue. So it's a aura that says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. And then, of course, if this thing would be put into the graveyard from anywhere you exile it. So this becomes an enchant creature that spits out copies of it every turn.
Yeah, and a lot of the clones only look at your side. This looks at both sides.
Yeah.
So I'm already in for 3 and a blue, copy the best creature in play. That's just a good card. We've played with this card before. It's quite strong.
It's very good.
Because if you have the best creature, great. Now you have the 2 best creatures. If they have the best creature, great. Now you're tied. And, copy it, triggers ETBs and all that good stuff. And then the backside's also really strong. And note, you can put the backside on their creature.
I was going to ask that. That's awesome.
So let's say you think they might have a removal spell. You can put this on their creature, and then they have the option of either kill or bounce their own creature to stop you from getting clones. And if they don't, you're going to overrun them with clones. It works especially well if they have a 3/4, something that bounces off each other, because then they don't even have the I'm going to attack and force you to kill this sort of thing going on. So I'm a big fan of Mirror Hall Mimic. I would give this one an A. This is a card you should just absolutely be playing in your deck, and I would even consider splashing this. The backside's a little hard to splash, but the front side's not.
Boy, this is pushed. I love this card. The art's even great. This is definitely a front runner for favorite card in the set. I can't wait to open me up a Mirror Hall Mimic. A for that one. Next is Necro Duality, which is 3 and a blue for an enchantment. This one's Mythic Rare. It says whenever a non-token zombie enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. All right, we have a build around.
Clear build around, and there are enough zombies in blue and black that this is a card you could put in some of your decks. You when you look at this card again, it's kind of like when you looked at the Winged Portent card earlier. It's not just, am I going to get 4 mana out of this card? It's how often am I going to get 6, 8, 10 mana out of this card to make up for the games when I just can't cast it, or it doesn't do anything. Also, it's asking you to take turn 4 off or something like that, because you want to play this as early as possible.
Yes.
That said, it's really nice with all the exploit cards, because you can make a token and exploit the token right away if you want, or just double trigger exploit, if you've got enough stuff to feed those things. And, there's a lot of pretty strong zombies. I would be looking at 7 or 8 zombies in my deck before this was good. Especially, you'd want a couple of them to also be good ones, like Diver Scob or something like that.
It's interesting because I don't need that much back. If I get to copy one thing that costs definitely 4 or more mana, 3 or more is okay, fine, because I have this upside of, being able to perhaps go off with it. I'm probably fine with that. Even a curve of just Necro Duality into 5-drop zombie is I'm good, right? I've made up my ground there. The times when it sucks, of course, is when it's the only card in your hand or when you don't draw your zombies. So I agree. I would want to push the number of zombies really as hard as I could. You said 8 to 10. I might even say 10 to 12. I'm really the fail case for this is you don't have a zombie to cast, and every other one is kind of sweet. I mean, yeah, especially with ETBs, as you mentioned.
And zombie colors, you're going to be blue black almost all the time. That this is good. Have ways to bring things back, from the graveyards. So you have access to them. So yeah, a lot of potential with Necro Duality. I'll give it a build around A. This card is really good if you can make it work. I agree. Build around A for Necro Duality, but you do have to pay that setup cost. Next is Overcharged Amalgam. This is 2 blue for a 3/3 zombie horror. It's rare. It's got flash and flying and exploit. And when it exploits a creature, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Woo! Yeah. So Overcharged Amalgam gives you a bunch of different cards all in one. The base level by itself is you can either play it as a 4-mana 3/3 flying with flash, which is great, can ambush like a 2/3 flyer, also just a big attacker, or you can play it, exploit itself, and just play it as a counter spell. You can just play it as like a 4-mana counter. And then sometimes, not an insignificant amount of the time, it's not that hard to set it up. You'll get both. You'll sack, a creature token or something small, and you'll play this in response to their 5-drop, counter their 5-drop, and get a 3/3 flyer out of the deal. So overall, a really strong card. Overcharged Amalgam is not hard to make work and very strong if you do make it work.
Yeah, that looks like an A to me.
Yep, I like A for Overcharged Amalgam, but good news, it gets better from here. The last card is a Hullbreaker Horror. Mm-hmm. This is 5 blue for a 7/8 flash. It's uncounterable. And it says, whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So this does cost 7 mana, and you have to, keep that in mind when you're looking at like, hey, how often am I going to get to utilize this? But this is kind of like just complete board dominating, like Ugin style levels of like, when this is in play, if you get to untap with it, the game is basically over.
Can you explain to me what return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand does or means?
All your spells are now Vensers.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, really good. So again, it costs 7, but imagine end of their turn on turn 7, you throw this into play, right? They can't counter it. Not very easy to kill it on 8 toughness. And then you untap, and if you just have sorceries, you're like, play a sorcery, bounce your biggest thing, play another one, bounce your biggest thing, and I've got a 7/8. And imagine if you have an instant, now this is just the shields are up.
Basically, like if they go tap 5 mana removal spell on your Hullbreaker Horror, you can just put any instant on the stack, bounce their removal spell back to their hand, and then get whatever you got from the instant.
Yeah, and even technically you could bounce this itself. It can target itself. So,
oh wow, jeez.
So it can save itself. I give this an A+ because yes, it costs 7. Just design your deck such that you'll hit 7 mana, and it is literally unbeatable as long as you have any sort of follow up. And even without follow up, it's a 7/8, so it's going to dominate a lot of boards too.
That's a cool card. Wow. Yeah. All right. A+ for Hullbreaker Horror. That is awesome. That moves us to black. Our first card up is Concealing Curtains. This is black for a 0/4 wall. It's rare. It has Defender, and you can pay 2 and a black to transform it at sorcery speed. If you do, it becomes Revealing Eye, which is a 3/4 eye horror. It's got menace. And when this creature transforms into Revealing Eye, target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. Wow.
This is a really cool card, first of all. Like, I love the flavor here. It's like you're over at the vampire's house, and then they have the suspicious curtains, and bam, there's the huge eye behind it.
Yeah.
Secondly, this card is really good. You play this on turn 1, turn 3, you turn it into a 3/4 menace and take their best card. And you're not straight up a card. You've just been dealing click them. You didn't actually make them discard it. But you still probably took any answer they have from it, or their 4-mana play, or whatever it is that you're worried about. And you get a 3/4 menace, which is kind of going to dominate the board for the next couple of turns. So I like Revealing Eye a lot. You can play and use it in the same turn if you later in the game. And sometimes you won't even flip it for a while because you've got other things to do. I like A- on Revealing Eye. Really strong card.
Yeah, you also, you don't have to take a card. Like if you look and they don't have an answer for the eye, you can just be like, yeah, keep it all. I'm going to keep hitting you with this thing. Yeah, Concealing Curtains gets an A-. Great card, especially at the 1 mana spot to get it down. Next is Graph Reaver. This is 1 and a black for a 3/3 zombie warrior at rare. It's got exploit. So 2 mana 3/3 exploit. When it exploits a creature, destroy target planeswalker. And at the beginning of your upkeep, Graph Reaver deals 1 damage to you. That just happens every time. So unfortunately for us, right, planeswalkers come up very seldom in limited, so that part's not really relevant. So we're looking at this as a 2 mana 3/3 that's a zombie that dings you every turn. Yeah,
and the question is, do you want a beater that badly? Do you want a 2 mana 3/3 willing to pay this price? My my experience with cards like this, because, there was Carnophage as a 1-mana 2/2 with kind of this ability. Sangrophage is a 2-mana 3/3 that made you lose 2 life turn. That card is horrible. And just Wretched Anurid. A lot of other cards that a lot of people probably won't know what I'm talking about. But trust me, I have played with a lot of these cards. They end up playing worse than you might think. Mm-hmm. Because, yes, the dream is real where you play this on turn 2 and your opponent, is like, wow, I'm just under so much pressure, and you don't care about the damage and you kill them. That can happen. But imagine you play this on turn 6, right? You draw this and it's a board that you can't get in. Losing a life at turn is a pretty big deal. So then sometimes you're just like, wow, should I play this? Should I not? I mean, the exploit text is like pretty clearly irrelevant. It's just basically never going to come up. Right. So where I'm at with cards like this is I would play Graph Reaver in an extremely aggressive deck, but you have to be at like an 8 or above on the aggression scale before I want Graph Reaver in my deck. Yeah. You just shouldn't put this in your control deck, and, well, absolutely not in your control deck, and probably not in your mid-range deck.
Right, and that says a lot. We're in black here. Does black have an aggressive color pair? Is black-red going to be on that level of aggression? Maybe. Right. So that might be the place to look for it. But on average, and by the way, average is what you want to do here, right? I'll remind you, it's really easy to fall into best case scenario mentality, right? Where you just look at this card as Luis described it. Okay, I'm playing it on turn 2 on the play every time. This card's awesome. Okay, it is pretty good there. But as Luis laid out, you also have to factor in the times when you have it on turn 6, the times when you have it a little off curve, turn 4, turn 5 you played. How good is it there? It's okay, right? It's not terrible, but on the whole, it's actually a bit below par if you're not significantly pressuring your opponent's life total. So yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like a C- or a C, something like that. Like you can put it into some aggressive decks and other decks probably won't be interested in it.
Yeah, and even in the aggressive decks, it's closer to like a C+ than a B. Yeah. Like even aggressive decks just have games where this card is going to be bad. So don't let the stats fool you. It's a playable card in the right circumstances, but it's not. It's not a huge bomb or anything like that. I like C- on Graph Reaver.
All right. What about Voldaren Bloodcaster?
This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 flying vampire wizard at rare. And whenever Voldaren Bloodcaster or another non-token creature you control dies, you create a blood token. And then whenever you create a blood token, if you have 5 or more blood tokens, you transform it. So it's not optional, and it only triggers when you make a blood token, though it doesn't have to be made off of this card specifically.
Okay. And what does it become?
It becomes Bloodbat Summoner, which is 3/3 flying, and it says at the beginning of the combat on your turn, up to 1 target blood token you control becomes a 2/2 bat with haste and flying. So basically you get a 2/1
It just becomes
flying.
that?
Yeah, permanently.
Whoa.
You get a 2/1 flying with massive upside because it can generate a couple blood tokens. Like the floor on this is they trade for your 2/1 flyer and you get a blood token, which a 2/1 for 2 that makes with flying that makes a blood token when it dies would be like a B-. Mm-hmm. Like that'd be a card I'd be pretty happy to play. And then this just says, hey, if you make a bunch of blood tokens or a bunch of creature dies, then I get a 3/3 that makes a 2/2, becomes like a little mini bloodline keeper because you've got 5 blood tokens in play once it's flipped. So it's effectively free to get those blood tokens or to get the bats. So
wow. And it's like better too, because Bloodline Keeper you had to tap. This gets to start jamming along with the bats. Like you only need a couple of blood tokens because the game's going to be over if you're jamming with those in the air. This card's sick.
Yeah, I like A for Voldaren Bloodcaster. Yeah. Really solid card.
Cool, too. Artwork, everything. Great job. Next is Demonic Bargain. There's no card called Demonic Bargain in the history of...
Yeah, every time there's a card like that, you kind of do a double take.
I always do. I'm like, wait, what? 2 and a black for a sorcery at rare. Exile the top 13 cards of your library. Gulp. Then search your library for a card. Put that card into your hand. Then shuffle.
So if it didn't have the 13 card clause, I still wouldn't be very high on Demonic Bargain.
No, tutors like this stink.
3 mana to tutor, you just don't get your mana back. Exiling 13 is a huge cost. This is an F and limited. Don't put this card in your deck.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because you can definitely come up with scenarios where 2 and a black sorcery to search up a card is fine. Where if you have like a particularly strong bomb, especially one that catches you up from being behind, but also have really cheap removal that you could get with it, where you could conceivably cast this and the removal spell in a turn to kind of get you out of a bind. But the exiling 13 makes it so that A, you're under pressure of getting decked at some point potentially, but also if you exile one of the options that you needed, then you're left with, a card that's just woefully inefficient. So yeah, no on Demonic Bargain. Dying to Serve. This is a fleet of butlers that are also zombies, I guess. 2 and a black for an enchantment. It's rare. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token, and this ability only triggers once each turn.
And for what it's worth, in the last review, we kind of blanked on the blood tokens being the discard outlet for the set, as we were informed by many helpful people.
Hundreds of people, yeah.
So even with that, I'm still not like super high on Dying to Serve, because getting a tapped zombie once per turn max is, it's pretty situational. But this is a build around that I would go for if I had a lot of ways to make blood tokens.
Yeah. I mean,
each blood token coming with a 2/2 is a good deal, and you can do one on their turn and one on your turn.
Yeah, this to me is a solid build around, right? You can just flip flop back and turn. You're only paying 1 per blood token, so if you can just amass 3, 4, 5 of them, and then play Dying to Serve and be like, go on your turn, make 1 on my turn. You're just making 2/2s every turn. That's going to add up really quickly, and it's not really costing you anything to do so. You just have to make sure you keep a card in your hand at all times. So I like build around B+ for Dying to Serve. That seems like a card that, like, if you're doing a hardcore blood token stuff, that's a card I want. Yeah,
I like B+ for Dying to Serve. It seems that seems like where it'll fit.
What about Falconwrath Forebear?
So there's a 2 and a black for a 3/1 flying. It's a vampire at rare. It can't block. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you make a blood token, and you can pay a black and sack 2 blood tokens to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yep, this is an efficient way to generate blood tokens, and it comes back pretty easily, and it just beats your opponent down. A 3-mana 3/1 flying is a very aggressive card. Obviously, it can't block, but this is such a good recursive, airborne threat that I would put this in any deck, even a control deck. I'd be interested in it because it kind of does the whole thing by itself. Mm-hmm. It self-fuels, and it's just not that hard to come up with a blood token or 2 to bring it back if you need to. Like, often it'll hit once, then maybe they'll kill it, and then you can bring it back. Also, it's a pretty good card to keep sacrificing. You could definitely imagine a deck that's like, exploit this, bring it back because I made blood tokens. Continue to rinse and repeat. So I like A- on Falconwrath Forebear. This is a card that you're really going to dread seeing on turn 3 if they have this in their deck.
Yeah, I like B+ for it, but I agree with the stuff you said. I just, the can't block is enough of a downside for me that I would bump it down just a little bit. Headless Rider is next. This is 2 and a black for a 3/1 zombie. It's rare. Whenever Headless Rider or another non-token zombie you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 3-mana 3/1 that dies into a 2/2 by itself. So yeah. Again, we're not really paying any cost here. So this doesn't get a build-around grade for me because it already does the thing by itself. You don't have to accommodate it. And obviously it's better in a zombie deck. You'll get a lot of extra mileage out of it. But it's kind of like a B to start with and moves up to like B+ range if you've got some more zombies to go with it. It just pays you so well up front.
Yeah, I like B to B+ for Headless Rider. Card just doesn't ask that much of you. Next is Path of Peril. This is 1 black for a sorcery. It's rare. And it says destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. But it has cleave for 4 white-black. And yes, it is just destroy all creatures.
So Path of Peril is kind of interesting. The mode of killing all 2 or less cost creatures isn't a particularly good one in Limited. Mm-hmm. It's just there's not that many creatures it hits, and most decks aren't going to have 3 in play, for example. So you're mostly playing this for the 6-mana mode, in which case you do have to be black-white. You can't just be one color. And at that point, a 6-mana Wrath that can double as a 3-mana mini Wrath if you need it to be, yeah, that's not outrageous. That's a card I would put in my black-white deck. It's not a card I'm excited about. 6-mana Wraths tend to be a little on the slow side. It's just hard to take full advantage of them. So I would give Path of Peril a B in black-white specifically, just because, it's still a Wrath. It's still a card that you'll be happy to see.
Yeah, I like your breakdown of it. It's not exciting on either end, but it just gets across the finish line by having the versatility. A little bit tough, though, because of the white-black that you mentioned. That is a fairly narrow grade we're giving it, because if you're just like black red, then it's, what does it get then? Sideboard C+ or something.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? Like, it's just such
you wouldn't start this in your deck if you couldn't
right. So
cast the cleave mode.
It's worth noting. Blood Vial Purveyor is next. 2 black for a 5/6 flying trample vampire for 4. Okay. I feel like this thing's going to be biting me, not them. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player creates a blood token. And whenever Blood Vial Purveyor attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each blood token defending player controls. Oh, weird. So they're really kind of twisting it here, right? Like, on one hand, yeah, it is hurting me because my opponent's getting these free blood tokens. But on the other hand, this is a flying trampler as well. So that +1/+0 is going to add up real quick.
Blood Vow Purveyor does a really good job of calling back to Abyssal Persecutor or Desecration Demon of like 4-mana giant flyer with a real drawback. Because what'll happen is, if you play this card and they go like spend 5 mana to kill it, they're, with like some sort of, or 6 mana to kill it, right? Like one of the big unconditional removal spells. Then you traded 1 for 1 and they got a blood token, which is a better deal for them. If they can't kill it, though, this card just runs them over really quickly. It hits like for 5, 6, 7 damage, maybe more.
Yeah.
I guess the worst case scenario is like you play this and they play like a cheap spell end of turn and then untap, play another spell and then kill it, and they got 3 blood tokens out of the deal. And because that is bad. Like, if they manage to run it up a little, or maybe took 1 hit and made 5 blood tokens before they kill it, but that's not going to happen that often.
I mean, even just the normal fail case does kind of stink for you, right? You play the Blood Veil Purveyor, they go untap, kill it. They get a blood token, they killed your guy.
I mean, that's going to be.
It's not a disaster for you, right? But I mean, that's not good. I feel that the stats though make taking that risk absolutely worth it, because the times when they don't kill it, it just kills them. I mean, what are they going to do? Not cast spells? And even if they don't, hell, they may even just have their own blood tokens lying around. Like, this thing is going to kill them in 2 or 3 turns if left unchecked, regardless of whether they cast spells or not. And as long as those spells don't kill Purveyor, which is hard to do, it's also a 5/6, has 6 freaking toughness. So, the red burn spells are for the most part off the menu. This thing's just going to kill them in a couple of turns and make it so that they need to top deck a removal spell or they lose almost on the spot. And that to me is worth it. So I'm pretty high on Blood Vial Purveyor.
Yeah, I would give it an A, and really the only drawback is if they're dying to it, the blood tokens give them a way to find it.
True, that's true.
Like, so whatever answers they need.
They cast a creature, then they do the blood token. Yeah, that makes sense. I also don't want to overlook the fact that it's just an insanely good blocker too. Like, you just play Blood Vial Purveyor, and your opponent's board is not getting through a 5/6 flyer. Like, that is just one of the best blockers you can have. So don't forget that as well. Henrika Domnathi is next. This is 2 black for a 1/3 legendary vampire at Mythic Rare with flying. So 4 mana, 1/3 flyer. Not quite on the Blood Vial Purveyor level, but let's see what Henrika can do. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one that hasn't been chosen. First is each player sacrifices a creature. The next is you draw a card and you lose 1 life. I think I'll probably start there most of the time. And then the last one is transform Henrika Domnathi. So you can actually do that too right away. Henrika Infernal Seer, which is the other side, is a 3/4 legendary vampire with flying, death touch, and lifelink. And it has the activated ability 1 black, each creature you control with flying, death touch, and or lifelink gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Holy crap.
Yeah, they're just not messing around with the rares here.
Wait, so I'm right though, right? I can just play this and then at the beginning of combat just transform it?
Yep. And you'll do that if you suspect they have like a 3 damage spell and you don't want to give them opportunity for that, or you want it to block. Otherwise, you're probably going to choose one of the other 2 modes. Then next turn, choose it, turn her into the Infernal Seer right before you attack. And you're going to get a great deal for 4 mana here. All of the modes are fantastic, and you get the option of whatever you want when you choose them. So Henrika Domnathi gets an A as well. Just a great card.
Super easy A for Henrika Domnathi. I would give it an A+. That card's incredible. the window to take care of it's so small. Make sure you play it on your first main phase if you want to do one of the things,
True.
right? If
which
you
do
don't,
basically always,
which you always do, right? You're basically never not wanting that. So do that. Next is Sorin the Mirthless. This is 2 black for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Sorin. It's mythic rare. 3 abilities on Sorin +1. Look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to its mana value. So you can bob yourself. Second ability is -2, which is create a 2/3 black vampire creature token with flying and lifelink. Wow, Sorin. -7, the ultimate is Sorin the Mirthless deals 13 damage to any target and you gain 13 life. Wow. That's balmy.
Oh yeah, Sorin the Mirthless. It's funny you said you could bob yourself because he actually just looks like Jay from Jay and Silent Bob.
He does.
Just Jason Mewes.
He does.
Sorin is great. I mean, you're most frequently going to make the 2/3 vampire right away, and then next turn hopefully +1. But sometimes you'll just make 2/3 flying lifelinks and just win the game easily off those.
Yeah.
Note that you don't have to use the +1. Look, you can +1, look at the card, and then decide not to put it in your hand.
Okay,
so
you can not reveal it.
You don't even have to kill yourself with it. And you're getting a lot of value here. He either comes in as a 5 loyalty planeswalker, or again, more frequently comes in as a 2 loyalty planeswalker with a 2/3 protecting it. It even protects itself from flyers, which is something a lot of planeswalkers really struggle with. So I would give Sorin the Mirthless an A+. This card's it never goes wrong, and sometimes it can go very, very right.
Yeah, agreed. This is also the classic template for a planeswalker. +1 draw a card, -2 make a thing, -7 win the game is kind of the way that they've done those for a long time. They've gone away from it, but here we're kind of back, and this is just awesome. What is mirth? Like, if you're mirthless, what do I not have?
It's like humorless. Mirth is like, humor and fun and happiness.
Well, he means business, and so does the card. So A+ for Sorin the Mirthless.
He's like Ben S when I tell him one of my jokes.
Yeah. Next is Cemetery Desecrator. What does this guy do?
This is a 4 black for a 4/4 zombie at Mythic with a menace. And when it enters the battlefield or dies, exile another card from a graveyard. And when you do, choose one. Remove X card counters from target permanent, where X is the mana value of the exiled card, or target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. So 6 mana 4/4 menace that kills something coming in and kills something going out. Really hard for there not to be cards in the graveyard to activate this. Obviously, this card's obscene. This might be the best card in the set. It's an A+. It's a 6 mana 4/4 menace that kills their best creature when it comes in and probably does it again when it dies.
It also is exiling cards from their graveyard if you want, just for the extra little, right? I mean, we liked cards that did that in the last set. Just that's it. Right? Just like you get to exile cards. Oh, this is really nice. It's like taking cards out of their hand. Well, how about you take a card out of their hand while killing their thing on board? Like, wow. Okay. A+ for Cemetery Desecrator. They are not messing around. This is a limited card, right? We're not going to be playing this in Constructed.
Oh, this might see some constructed play. I would not rule that out.
Okay. Well, I love it in limited, no doubt about it. What about Dread Feast Demon?
This is a 5 black for a 6/6 flying demon at rare. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice a non-demon creature. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Dread Feast Demon. So it's not optional, but you get to cash out with another Dread Feast Demon, which next turn means they're going to eat all your non-token, your non-demon creatures rather. So you're soon going to have a board of just Dread Feast Demons, which doesn't seem like a bad place to be.
Not the worst. Yeah, you're basically upgrading everything. 7 mana is the catch, right? That's the tough part.
Yeah, but this is an easy A as well. It's a 7 mana demon that if they don't have a removal spell right away, like right then, you end up with 2 6/6 flyers. If they kill one, even if they killed the original one, the token still does the same thing next turn.
Right. So it's an actual copy of this card. It's not just another 6/6 flyer. Yeah, that's stupid. Okay. So another A? I mean, the 7 mana is a little tough, but whatever. This card's worth it.
Yeah, fantastic card.
I mean, if you have any board state at all,
creature in play.
Right,
Yes.
you're passing the turn back and you have 2 6/6 flyers and you're like, go ahead. do your worst. It's like, I mentioned 5/6 flying being a great blocker. Well, 6/6 is even better. So there you go. So another A for Dreadfast Demon. Last is Toxrill the Corrosive. Oh no, a slug. Ever since we played on that stupid cruise and you just wrecked me with that dumb
Molder Slug.
I don't like these slug cards. You have to read this one too. I'm off it.
This is a 5 black for a 7/7 slug horror. It's legendary at Mythic Rare. 7 mana, 7/7. The beginning of each end step, so yours and theirs, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. Whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. And you can pay a blue and a black and sacrifice a slug to draw a card.
Wow. So I'm trying to find like the bad part of this, but there isn't any, right? This is just all awesome.
I'm saying that this is looking like a Prince format, not a Pauper format, just from a perusal of these rares. Like,
no kidding.
I mean, I think for black, we've given now, this will be the 6th A in a row. And of the, 7, 11, 14 black cards, like more than half are getting A's.
Yeah. And these are the types of cards that take over the game in an absolutely dominant way, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Bloodveil Purveyor ends the game super fast. Henrika's impossible to beat once transformed. Sorin is just straight up bomb. Cemetery's 2/2 for ones. Dreadfast Demon's 2 6/6s for 7 mana. And this thing kills all of their stuff and draws you cards while making a board state on your side.
Yeah, I mean, this is an A+. You play this for 7 mana. You get a 7/7. Again, you just go right to your end step. It kills all their X1s, and you get like a slug or two. And then if they don't kill it on their turn, all of a sudden their creatures now get an additional -1/-1. And now you probably get another slug. And then at that point, like, how are they winning that game?
And by the way, it's a card draw engine.
Yeah, you can get a turn of slugs into cards. I guess technically it can even sacrifice itself to draw a card if it really wants to. But yeah, I mean, Toxrill the Corrosive is just going to end games. Again, it costs 7, but 7 mana is attainable if that's what you focus on. And when you have a creature this powerful on 7, you will focus on doing that.
Yeah, that's incredible. So another A, 6 A's in a row to end black. Wow. Yeah, this is looking a little princely. Let's see if red changes that. The first card is Kessig Wolfrider. This is red for a 1/2 human knight at rare. It's got menace, 1 power menace creature. 2 and a red, tap it, and exile 3 cards from your graveyard to make a 3/2 red wolf creature token is its activated ability. I actually like that. That's cool.
Yeah, this is a solid card for sure. I mean, it's a 1/2 menace does actually, the fact menace is funny on a 1 power creature, but it does mean if you play this on turn 1, it'll probably attack like 3 or 4 times before they can really assemble a blocker. And then later in the game, this lets you cash in cards for wolves. It only needs to make 1 wolf, and you feel like you got reasonably paid off. I like B for Kessig Wolfrider. It's a solid little curve filler.
Yeah, I like that. I really like cards that you only pay the 1 mana for and then do relevant things later. And this is also fine as a 1/2 menace to put whatever, I don't know, equipment on or something like that to just peck in for a few damage points. What grade did you say for
I like B.
B,
I mean,
yeah.
You're just not going to invest much mana in it, and it's going to be really good. Imagine playing this on turn 5 alongside a 4-drop, and your opponent's going to be like, "Damn, this sucks."
Yeah. And if you get to make the second 3/2 wolf, it's really doing work. Yeah,
that's just game.
Cemetery Gatekeepers next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/1 first strike vampire. It's mythic rare, so this better be good. When Cemetery Gatekeeper enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Okay. Whenever a player plays a land or casts a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player.
So it's confusing reading. It doesn't happen every time they play a land. It only triggers if you've exiled a land and they play a land, or if they play like a creature and you've exiled a creature, or if they play an instant and you've exiled an instant, and so on.
Okay.
Mostly what this, and it's symmetrical. So like if you exile land, like you're setting both players up to take damage whenever they play a land. But it's a 2 mana 2/1 first strike. I'm going to put that card in all my red decks and be happy with it. Because if you don't want the ability to hurt yourself, you can just probably choose something that's not going to affect you very much. So it is an upside to have that ability since you have full control over what it does. Though again, it does hit both sides, so it's not always going to work out completely in your favor.
So if you exile a land and then you play a land, it dings you.
Oh yeah. I think Exile Land is usually going to be really strong with this card because
if you find one in a graveyard,
yeah, that's not going to be that easy. But sometimes there'll be mill or discard, right? Like if you discard to a blood token and play this, like imagine if you're able to Exile Land on like turn 4 with this, your opponent's probably going to, if they can't kill this, is going to take 4 or 6 damage off that ability. Maybe you will too, but hopefully you're in good position to take advantage of that effect, like by being the aggressive deck. Also, a 2-mana 2/1 first strike is like a B-, just straight up. Like that's a good card. So I would even say this is a B because you can often like if you exile a creature, which isn't that hard, you're setting both players up to take a bunch of damage, but that could definitely benefit you more than the opponent.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, just the fact that you have a 2/1 first strike early in the game, that already breaks that symmetry in your favor. So would we go B then on Cemetery Gatekeeper? I don't want to go too crazy on it, but
yeah, I like B.
Okay. Alchemist Gambit is next. It's 1 red for a sorcery. It's rare. It says take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. You also exile Alchemist Gambit. So you pay 3 mana sorcery to take an extra turn after this one. And for some reason, damage can't be prevented that turn. But then if you don't win that turn, then you lose. But it also has Cleave for 4 blue, red, so 7 mana total. And it takes the whole you lose the game part out of the equation. So it's just 7 mana, take an extra turn after this one, exile it, and during that turn, the damage can't be prevented. I don't think I like either sides of this, really. 7 mana gold card is like a lot to pay just for an extra turn. And then I really hate the 1 red side of it. Like, that you have to win the game that turn.
Yeah, this is not a card I'm interested in playing. It's a bit too much of a gambit, as it were. It's just neither side is good, and they're both pretty narrow because paying 7 for an extra turn, there's just no guarantee that extra turn is going to be worth much. You have to either be attacking or have like some sort of recurring, value proposition to make that good. And then the 3 mana version, of course, is only going to be good when you're basically already winning. Like there are specific circumstances where that will win you the game when you would have otherwise lost, but they're just not that common. So I think F for Alchemist Gambit. This isn't where you want to be.
Agreed. Also, this is, I think, a really interesting card if you're looking at 17 lands data to look at. This is a good case study on why we use games in hand win rate, right? Because there's so many games that you'll draw Alchemist Gambit, but you recognize that if you cast it, you will lose the game. So you don't cast it. And that's where it really shows how poor the card is. Because, of course, any card that you draw and you can't cast at all is a 0. It's a blank. It doesn't do anything. And you have to avoid those at basically all cost. Where the win percentage when you cast this card should be through the roof because people will only cast it when they're going to win the game. So there you go. Next is Chandra, Dressed to Kill. This is 1 red for a 3 loyalty legendary Chandra at Mythic Rare. 3 abilities on this Chandra. +1, add red. Chandra, Dressed to Kill deals 1 damage to up to 1 target player or planeswalker. So you don't get to hit a creature, but you are getting a mana back out of it. There's another +1, and that is exile the top card of your library. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. So a couple of notes there. It's not play, so you can't play lands. Also, lands aren't red. But on top of it, you do have to pay and everything like that too. So this is probably the type of thing you want to use the turn that after you cast Chandra so that you have all your mana available. And then Chandra's got a -7 ultimate here, which is exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Not super impressed by this one, Luis.
I think it's going to be okay.
I like the card. I like the middle, just card advantage route. That seems fine, but that's not mind blowing.
Yeah, the thing is, because it misses on lands and non-red spells, you're looking at probably more than half your deck, but not by a ton. Or sorry, more than like a third of your deck, but not by a ton. Because, if you have 23 spells and like 14 are red, you're talking 14 out of 40. Mm-hmm. Like, because you're going to bias towards red if you have Chandra, but that's still not like straight up, hey, this is draw a card. And
it's definitely not. Yeah, I mean, you have less than 50% chance of hitting each time by a pretty significant amount.
Yeah, and then the +1 of like you get to add a mana is nice if it survives, but dealing one to your opponent is not that impressive. I think Chandra is pretty medium. This looks, I mean, I would play it in a red deck. I don't think I would cut the card because it's a 3-mana planeswalker that ticks up to 4 loyalty, and then next turn can ramp my mana by a turn, or can start +1ing to try to hit, playable spells. But it's not a card I'm going to prioritize. I think C+ is about right.
Yeah, I was going to go C- for Chandra, but I think you're probably right. Like, the mana does matter. Like, that is a thing. Also, there's this sort of life gain aspect to it where people will certainly send their creatures over to Chandra, even if they shouldn't sometimes. But this is one where I'd love to see a case study on this card, or like, say, a solid uncommon, like, what was it called? The Bugbear, like 3/3 haste for 3. Which one of those cards increases your win percentage more? And I'd have my money on the 3/3.
Yeah, I would too. Okay. But I think
we also give that a higher grade than this. So
most of the time. So
yep. Okay. Next is Curse of Hospitality. It's a weird name for a card. 2 and a red for an aura curse at rare. Enchant player. Creatures attacking enchanted player have trample. So obviously you're putting this on your opponent. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to enchanted player, that player exiles the top card of their library. Until end of turn, that creature's controller may play that card and may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell.
So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, this is kind of like a 3-mana curse that now makes it so all your creatures are kind of saboteurs when they hit, and then gives them trample to kind of heighten that. The downside is this is a lot worse than just drawing a card, because first of all, cards in your deck are generally better than cards in your opponent's deck because you built your deck to work together, presumably. Though I guess if you had a bad draft, maybe that's not the case. And then the main thing is, though, of course, you're not always going to get a chance to play those cards. Like, right. You're going to exile something that you can't play. You can play lands off it, which is nice, but you're going to exile something that costs 5 and you only have 4 mana. How much do we like this?
I don't like it at all.
Is not very much. Like,
yeah. The issue that I have is that it lines up with the core conceit of most red decks, which is I want to attack you with my creatures, but it isn't a creature. It doesn't do any damage. And therefore it makes it harder for you to continually connect because you're not able to build out a board with more creatures to leverage. And so it itself makes it less likely that you will do the thing that it's asking you to do, which is to hit your opponent. And I feel that, if you can hit your opponent consistently, you're already doing the right things. And this is going to end up being a win more card where you're like, hey, look, I'm killing you. And now I'm getting extra cards so I can really kill you more. Where the only time when I really want it is when you're on that razor edge of I'm just ahead enough on board to hit you with some creatures, but I'm not ahead enough on board to make that my game plan that will for sure win the game. So I'm going to leverage the advantage I get off of Curse of Hospitality to finish the game off. And that's like too narrow for me, because if you're behind, this card, it does actual nothing. Like, right. If you need to block and you don't have a good attack, Curse of Hospitality is 3 mana, rip it up. Just throw it in the garbage can, doesn't do anything. Then that to me is a huge cost to pay for any card in an aggro deck, that if I need to be able to hit you in order to make this card good, and it doesn't make it so that I can hit you. I mean, I guess trample technically does, but you know what I mean? It doesn't remove a creature or get my guys through in any other way. I'm really low on it then. I just don't think that it serves the needs of the deck as it sees. I mean, there's definitely upside, but I wouldn't put this card in my deck.
Yeah, the one part that you didn't touch on, which could be interesting, is this with like evasive creatures. Like, imagine if you had a couple of the 1/1 flyers in blue, and this card could be kind of nice, because then you're in a spot where you're not killing them, but every damage you deal gives you an additional card. That's just not going to happen very frequently. So I do think the card's like a D, but I'm kind of interested in trying this with like unblockables or flyers in some way. I don't like it in just your generic aggro deck for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like D to D minus for curse, but I do like looking for an archetype that can use it. That's cool. Dominating Vampire is 1 red for a 3/3 vampire at rare. When Dominating Vampire enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of vampires you control until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn.
Quite a strong card. I mean, this is going to be, you're going to be on the receiving end of like a curve into this, and you're just going to be really unhappy.
Grown Test City.
And it's also a 3-mana 3/3, at slightly harder cost, which is fine. In a vampire deck, this is like B trending towards like A minus. In the average red deck, it's probably still around a B. That it's just going to be hard not to have some vampires to go along with this, though obviously sometimes it'll miss. But even then, the cases where it misses aren't when it's a 3/3 for 3. The cases where it misses are when you draw 3 swamps and a mountain and can't cast it, which is an inherent risk in any double colored card, which is why you don't see that many double colored cards, especially at common, because they're just kind of sucks when you draw them. But yeah, I would give Dominating Vampire a B, but be on the lookout. In a vampire deck, it can be really strong.
Yeah, and I want to dovetail on your point about the mana cost thing. That's particularly true on cards like this that are so much better on turn 3 if you're not doing the whole vampires, like stealing a card thing. Right, where when you miss that, it really starts to punish you if you can't get this thing down until turn 5 because of mana issues. Change of Fortune is next. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery at rare. Discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. I could just give it an F, but like that is interesting, right?
It's an F, but I have a question. How many 4-mana red sorceries that you discard your hand and draw that many cards would you imagine to need in a set? Because if you chose 2, then that's how many there are in this set.
So is the dream here that you have like 6 mana, do 2 blood tokens, then cast Change of Fortune or something? Is that what?
I mean, clearly that's what's going on, but that's still an F. It's it by definition is down a card, and you don't get a choice of what to keep.
Right.
And then if you do some work, maybe your parody or up a card. Yeah. F for me on Change of Fortune.
All right. F on Change of Fortune. Next is, you're going to have to go with this one, Luis. I'm not reading a card called Creepy Puppeteer, and I'm not going to look at the artwork either.
All right. Well, Creepy Puppeteer is 3 and a red for a 4/3 haste. It's a human rogue at rare. And whenever it attacks, if you attacked with exactly one other creature this combat, you may have that creature's base power and toughness become 4/3 until end of turn. Oh, I'm a fan of this one. 4 mana 4/3 haste is great for a beatdown deck, and this makes your like 2 or 3 drop into a 4/3 as well. It does limit you to attacking with 2 creatures instead of 3 maybe, but it's probably coming in for 8 points of damage. That's going to be more. Plus, if you don't want to upgrade, you could just attack with this as a 4 mana 4/3 haste, a card I'm happy to play. So I like A minus on Creepy Puppeteer. This card's going to feel downright unfair when you play it on turn 4.
Yeah, I was going to say B plus for it, but I agree the beatdown potential is insane for this thing. And the artwork, that was not what I expected. I thought it was going to be some weird puppet thing. It looks like, I don't know, some anime thing or something. I don't even.
It looks like the Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, it doesn't look that creepy. Next is Ill-Tempered Loner. Who should be the Ill-Tempered Loner? Pat Cox?
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable.
We can workshop that one. There's got to be better than Pat. Pat's too nice for that one. Ill-Tempered Loner, 2 red for a 3/3 human werewolf. We could call it BK at rare. Whenever Ill-Tempered Loner is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. That's kind of cool. And then it has 1 on a red. Ill-Tempered Loner gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and there's no limit on that as well. So that's nice. And then it's also daybound, so it transforms into Howlpack Avenger, which is a 4/4 werewolf that says whenever a permanent you control is dealt damage, Howlpack Avenger deals that much damage to any target, and you can pay 1 on a red to give it +2/+0 until end of turn as well.
So it turns from a 3/3 into a 4/4, but also now starts triggering off any permanent, which is a pretty big upgrade. Mm-hmm. Like that definitely makes this a dangerous card. I mean, the front side of the card is already amazing because it's a 4 mana 3/3. Because of the pump ability, they can't just ignore it. And then when you attack with it, it's just going to take out 2 things most of the time.
Yes, like basically if they put a 4/4 in front of it and you go cool pump it, it takes 4, it does 4 to something else.
Yeah. So
and then
I like A for Ill-Tempered Loner.
I do too, but Howlpack Avenger is a game changer, as you said, because now if it's transformed, you can attack with like all of your creatures, and effectively they're going to soak up whatever damage, and the Avenger's going to get to do that damage, to wherever you want, and that could even just be the opponent.
Yeah, well, if you get to flip this, you just attack with everything and they die most of the time.
That's basically
because if this dies in combat alongside 3 other creatures, your opponent probably takes 12 damage.
Right. So that's awesome. I like A for Ill-Tempered Loner. We've got to workshop that one, Luis. Maniform Hellkite is next. This is a Mythic Dragon, so this better be good. 2 red for a 4/4 flyer. I got 5/6 Flying Trample for 4 mana out of black. You better bring the heat here, Maniform Hellkite. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX red dragon illusion creature token with flying and haste, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Oh, womp. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah, but still, how much more do you need on your 4 mana 4/4 flyer before you feel paid off? Because I think turning all your spells into kind of like fireballs for your opponent is
Dude, it's
nice.
almost 2022. I need more than this. This is just like, this is a common, like,
yeah, okay.
No, that's obviously an A.
Yeah, it's an A. I mean, obviously, like, so the ability is not going to save you when you're behind, but it's a 4 mana 4/4 flyer. That's already a great place to start. So A for Maniform Hellkite. Don't worry too much about making a spell deck with this. It's better in decks with spells, but just put this card in your deck. You'll be happy with it. It's not like you're going to get past them late as a result or anything.
Exactly. So A for Maniform Hellkite. Next is Stensia Uprising. This is 2 red for an enchantment. It's rare. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 red human creature token. Then, if you control exactly 13 permanents, you may sacrifice Stensia Uprising. When you do, does this say you win the game? No, it says it deals 7 damage to any target.
Yeah, but those permanents count lands, so you're going to be threatening to get to 13 most games, I think.
So are we happy with 4 mana, make a 1/1 every turn, including at the beginning of that first end step? I mean, that's pretty slow.
Yeah, it is very hard to kill, though, right?
Yes.
You just play this and then do that. I think this card is worth playing. The buyout clause is interesting because that really does mean that at some point they're going to take 7 or you're going to kill a big creature. And then what I would want to make Stensia Uprising a card I'd be happy to play is some way to enhance those tokens, whether that's a way to pump them, equipment, sacrifice cards, like something where it feels like I'm using these tokens and not just getting a 1/1 every turn. But 4 mana unconditional, make a 1/1 every turn, including your first turn, like immediately triggers on your end step. That's pretty good. I would say this card looks like a B- to me, like a card I would just put in my deck,
Yeah, I mean, because the 2 use cases that I think come up the most often are it makes a 1/1, and if you're behind a bit, that thing can block something on the ground. So it basically, prevents one of their non-trampling ground creatures from being able to hit you sort of indefinitely. Okay, that's not a bad, worst case. And then it has the upside of just giving you an inevitability. You will win the game if you're not getting hit or having to chump these, because they'll just add up eventually and you'll kill your opponent. It might take 10 turns, but you can do it, and you don't have to sack it. So if you get to 13 permanents, you can say, I'll just keep it and keep making 1/1s and I'll kill you with them, in 5 more turns. I like that too. So I like B for Stensia Uprising. I want to try that card out. I like cards like that. Next is Volatile Arsonist. This is 3 red for a 4/4 human werewolf at Mythic Rare. It has Menace and Haste. So 5 mana 4/4 Menace Haste. This thing hits hard. And whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to each of up to 1 target creature, up to 1 target player, and or up to 1 target planeswalker. So it just gets to ding something. It gets to ding a creature and them. Wow. Mm-hmm. And then it also has Daybound. When it transforms, it becomes Dire Strain Anarchist, which is a 5/5 Menace Haste. And whenever it attacks, it deals 2 damage to each of those things instead of the 1.
Yeah.
Damn.
This card's a beating. If you can kill a creature the turn you play this, it seems pretty hard to lose that game. And even if you don't, this probably cracked in for 5 points of damage on turn 5 and left this huge thing in play that, if it ever flips, is just going to ravage their team. Mm-hmm. I like A- on Volatile Arsonist. Very strong card. You'd prefer to be aggressive, but you should obviously put this in your deck if you're playing red regardless.
Yeah, I'm with you. Same grade. Awesome card. What does Olivia's Attendance do?
This is a 4 red for a 6/6 vampire at rare. It's got Menace. Whenever it deals damage, create that many blood tokens, and you can pay 2 in a red, and it deals 1 damage to any target.
Wow.
So if you play this and then trade it off, or get it into combat, you get 6 blood tokens.
It just deals damage to anything?
And then you can pay 3 to just ping anything for 1, including their creatures, and you get a blood token when you do that as well.
And since you've already got the 6 mana to cast the Attendants, you can basically toss around 2 damage at will the next turn.
Yeah, this is a solid card. Like, how often is this going to be, like a lot better than Colossal Dreadmaw is kind of the question. Like, I think it is generally going to be better. It's got upsides, but it is a 6 mana 6/6 that doesn't do something immediately. And if they deal with it, you often are not going to get anything out of it. The one hit from this should give you all the blood you'll need for the rest of the game. Like, once you get 6 tokens, you're probably set.
And that's the question, right? Is the true upside on this card is that it just dumps blood tokens on the battlefield. And if you have a way to use those, you'll probably be able to win the game pretty easily. I really like the activated ability too. So you play it, say go, your turn, you attack, and they're like, I really want to block with my 4/4 and my 2/2. Right, so that I can actually kill the Olivia's Attendants, but you just got this activated ability sitting there that says I can just kill your 2/2 before damage, and then you're just going to lose your 4/4. Like, and I'm going to get 8 freaking blood tokens. That makes life very, very, like, they need 2-3 toughness or higher things to turn after to double block with that also add up to 6 power. And even if they do, you're still getting all the blood tokens. This card seems really excellent to me.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's like B+ good, not A level good.
B+. That's what I have too. B+ for Olivia's Attendants. All right, that moves us to green. Ascendant Pack Leader is our first card up for green. It is green for a 2/1 wolf. It's rare. It enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. And whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah, I like this card because early in the game, it's a 1 mana 2/1, which those are fine. They're not like amazing, but those are fine. You play one on turn 1, especially on the play, you kind of have the initiative. Later in the game, it's probably going to enter as a 3/2. And then, if it sits in play, it'll become a 4/3 or a 5/4 even a couple turns after that. And that's a lot for a 1 mana card. Like you definitely feel like you're getting your value from that. So I like B for Ascendant Pack Leader. It's just a good card. You're going to be happy with it in your deck.
Agreed. B for Ascendant Pack Leader. Dig Up is green for a sorcery. It's rare. It says search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So G sorcery, go get a basic. But it also has cleave. The cleave is interesting. It's 1 black, green. So it's actually heavier on black than green. It's 4 mana. And if you cleave it, the text becomes search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. The same text on Demonic Tutor.
This is kind of how I like my Demonic Tutors. You get this as a split card where it's like, most of the time you're casting it to go get a land, which is fine, obviously, like, that works. And then sometimes, in the late game, you're just going to be like, all right, well, I'm now going to cash this in for, the best card in my deck, the whatever I need. So it's kind of like a double-faced card, right? One of those land spells where early it's a land, late it's a spell. Basically what you want with this is you want to make sure that like you have enough, 9 or 10 forests so that when it's in your opening hand, it's reliably a land. You don't want to be playing this in like 7 forests, otherwise you're not really going to work out. But in a black-green deck, I would be happy to play this.
Definitely.
Again, it's a gold card. You don't really want to play this unless you have the black mana available. But yeah, in those decks, I think it's like a B-. It's a solid little like land slot that all kind of doubles as a spell.
Yeah, that gives you a flexible thing for later.
It helps if you're 3 colors somehow as well.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that has in the deck that you described a very high floor. You're just not giving up that much to have Dig Up in your deck. Like you just turn it into a land and you can keep Forest, Dig Up, 3-drop, whatever, right? You can just keep those type of cards and just go get your second land. The flavor text is good. Things buried on Innistrad rarely seem to stay that way. Cemetery Prowler's next. This is 1 green for a 3/4 wolf. It's mythic rare and it's got vigilance of all things. So 3 mana, 3/4 vigilance. I like that. Whenever Cemetery Prowler enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. I like that too. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card type they share with cards exiled with Cemetery Prowler. So if I exile a creature, my creatures cost 1 less. If I exile another creature, they cost 2 less?
No, it's only 1.
Okay, so up to 1 for each type. Okay.
But if you'd exiled an artifact in a creature, and an artifact creature would cost 2 less.
Okay, that's cute.
But mostly this is a 3-mana 3/4 vigilance, and it'll reduce the cost of some of your stuff sometimes. I mean, that's fine. It's a 3-mana 3/4 vigilance. It's pretty good. And like, if you play a 2-drop trade and then play this on 3, you then get to play a creature a turn ahead of schedule, or maybe double creature, because it reduces them all by 1. So if you play 2 in the same turn, you kind of got double value. So I like B for Cemetery Prowler. It's just a pretty robust. I would go a
little higher. Like I'm going B plus, nothing crazy, but maybe I'm still in Midnight Hunt where, there was flashback and disturb. So exiling people's cards was really pretty good from their graveyard. I'm assuming that this is still going to be pretty decent. And so I'm going to bump it a little bit. I mean, 3/4 vigilance for 3 is a house. Like that's the biggest thing on the board for a couple of turns at least.
Yeah, I like B plus on Cemetery Prowler.
All right. What about Hamlet Vanguard?
This is a 2 and a green for 1/1 human warrior at rare. It's got Ward 2, and it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it for each other non-token human you control. So right off the bat, it's a build around. You just, won't put this in your deck unless you have a bunch of humans. If you can hit the sweet spot and have 2 humans, this card's absurd. I do have kind of a major issue with the card. It's a Vanguard who goes in front, but this card actually wants to be like the last human you play. So
yeah.
It was named by someone who maybe doesn't know what a Vanguard is, I guess. But
I don't know what a Vanguard is.
There we go. Did you name the card?
No.
But also it's got the 2 shields thing is also kind of wacky, but whatever.
Yeah. It has like double strike on defense, double ward.
I would give this a builder on A. Like in a heavy humans deck, like in your green-white humans deck, this card is going to be a house. And sometimes in the late game, you'll play it as like a 7/7.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. But in a non-humans deck, it's not even a card, right?
No, I mean, you would need a minimum of like 5 or 6 humans to even consider this. And you're probably looking at like 10 before you start to get excited about it.
Okay. So build around A for Hamlet Vanguard, but you got to build around it. Howling Moon is next. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment. It's rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target wolf or werewolf you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Well, we can see where this one's going.
Yeah, see, it makes it so once you flipped it tonight, they can't flip it back today without giving you a wolf.
That's pretty cool. But really, the main part is that this is like kind of a permanent combat trick that gets to hit one of your wolves or werewolves every turn. But that, of course, means you need to have wolves and werewolves in your deck to make this work. With that being said, is that even that good?
No, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
+2/+2 on your turn is like a solely offensive capability, which, these decks are going to be offensive, but still it's not, that great. And then your opponent has a lot of control over the other part of it. It's not like double spell like happens all that often. So
right.
I would say Howling Moon looks like a D to me. I could imagine some matchups where it can really constrain them, but most of the time I don't think this is going to be that great.
I would give it a build around D. I don't know if we've given that grades before, but that's pretty tough. Hiveheart Shaman is next. It's 3 and a green for a 3/5 human shaman at rare. Whenever Hiveheart Shaman attacks, by the way, 4 mana 3/5, yes please. Whenever Hiveheart Shaman attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card that doesn't share a land type with the land you control. Put that card onto the battlefield, no tapped, and then shuffle. You can also pay 5 and a green to create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. You can only activate this at sorcery speed. This is a really kind of an interesting journey to take on Hiveheart Shaman. The first stop, of course, is 4 mana 3/5. So we're already like deep into the B range here just on sheer stats. And then you've got this weird whenever it attacks thing. Let's say you're playing a 2-color deck. If you've got a plains and a forest and you attack, you just don't get to get anything unless you have a random mountain or some other land in your deck, right?
Yeah, you need a third color.
So there you go. So that's going to be very hit or miss whether you're splashing or not. I would not play a third, a random mountain in my deck. I don't think just to go get with the shaman unless I had something to cast with it. But then we're back on the train again with 6 mana, make a 1/1 green insect creature token. That's really going to be a 3/3 a lot of the time. If you have like, again, a green, a forest and whatever, planes or something else.
I would be tempted to play an off-color land if my mana could support it. Because
you need 4/4s rather than 3/3s?
Well, it also means this gets you a land and lets you activate it the turn after you play it.
Oh, in case you had already gotten your 2 colors of mana down.
Right. You play this on 4, attack, get your 5th land, play your 6th land, and activate and make a 4/4. Seems like a pretty cool little curve.
That is really cool. Obviously, there's a disaster scenario where you've already played it, but whatever. I think if you can afford it, which sometimes you'll know if you can, like an 8/8/1 mana base is still fine, and I think this card pays you off a lot for having that extra land. Okay. This card's awesome, by the way. Like, just in case we buried the lead here, like 4 mana 3/5 is great. It ramps it out. You get to just pump out huge creatures, even if they're not 4/4s, they're 3/3s just on a basic 2-color deck. I like A for Hiveheart Shaman.
I would go a little lower. I would probably say A-, but yeah, it's a great card.
I don't know how you could go lower. I mean, you're paying a 4 mana 3/5. Like, you're not dying that turn, right? Like, and then if you just wait a couple more turns, you get to just start pumping these things out where you're just like, go. And they're like, okay, I'll play a creature. You're like, cool, make a 3/3, my turn. Right.
Well, I probably wouldn't say go because it's a sorcery activation.
Okay. Then you're like, make a 3/3 go. Right. And they're like,
you do it,
cool, cast a creature. And you're like, great. I'm just going to be making 3/3s every turn until you kill this thing.
Yeah. I guess I guess that is probably an A or A-. Yeah.
Especially if you can splash. I mean, that's ridiculous. Also, it's worth noting that the land's untapped, right? I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, that's good for the curve. I think that's intentional.
Okay. Next is Howlpack Piper. This is same cost, 3 and a green, but this one's only a 2/2. Get out of here, Howlpack Piper. This is a human werewolf at rare that can't be countered. Don't really care. 1 and a green, tap it. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If it's a wolf or werewolf, untap Howlpack Piper, and you can only activate this at sorcery speed. But it also has Daybound, and it flips into Wild Song Howler, which is a 4/4 werewolf that says whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Wild Song Howler, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That's a sweet one.
Yeah, I really like the 2 sides where one's a piper and the other finds you creatures to pipe in.
Mm-hmm. You have to get it transformed back, though, right?
It's true.
Pipe in, but
whatever. Yeah, I like this card. 4 mana 2/2 that lets you cast a big creature next turn. Like, is a pretty good, in terms of mana efficiency if it survives. And then the flip, passing to flip this and then getting to draw a card is pretty nice, which it'll hit most of the time. So I like B for Howlpack Piper. Cool card.
Yeah, I like B as well. And I really focus on the second part that you said where you can just pass a turn to get a card back, because the weakness of these types of cards is that you just don't have the creatures in hand. You have a 4 mana 2/2 that can't put anything onto the battlefield. And this lets you say, you know what? I'm going to pass. I'm going to upgrade from the crappy 2/2 to a beefy 4/4 that's better blocker, attacker, etc. And I'm going to find something to cast next turn too. I really like that. B for Howlpack Piper. Splendid Reclamation is next. It's 3 and a green for a sorcery at rare. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
This
Can I just
card
not?
Is an F.
Yeah, I'm just giving an F. Next is Ulvenwald Oddity. This is 2 GG for a beast. It's rare. It's a 4/4 trample haste beast. And you can pay 7 mana, 5 green to transform it. What does it become? My God. Oh my God. It's an 8/8 trample haste that says other creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste.
Yeah. Overall oddity is just what's beating. I mean, you play this on 4, hit them with a 4/4 trample haste. And then at some point it just turns into an 8/8 that also just does some other stuff.
Wow. And also if it happens to be night, does that do anything? No, you just have to pay to get it transformed. Yeah. Okay. Still, yeah, that's just incredible.
That's an A for Ulvenwald Oddity, just a beating up a card.
What do you think about the threat of activation on it?
It's not actually too much threat of activation because you're probably just going to flip it and kill them, but yes, that does happen.
Glorious Sunrise is next. Yeah, A for Oddity. Glorious Sunrise is 3 green for an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Target land gains tap, add GGG until end of turn. Draw a card if you control a creature with power 3 or greater, or you gain 3 life.
Glorious Sunrise is excellent. All of these abilities are, good when you need them to be good, which is like, hey, I'll draw an extra card, or hey, one of my lands adds an additional 2 mana this turn, or my creatures all get +1/+1 and trample and I attack you, or if you're behind, I gain 3 life. So
are these even that good?
Oh yeah, when you see this card come out, you're gonna be very unhappy because the gain 3 life can really help prolong the game to the point where the mana advantage is huge, or they start getting value out of the +1/+1 and trample, and or just draw a card, an enchantment that draws you a card every turn when that's what you want. The key is these are a bunch of different narrow things, but you get to choose the one you want.
I mean, if it just drew me a card, I would be 100% in, but it doesn't, right? I mean, I have to have a creature with power 3 or greater, and that's not ridiculously hard, but that's not every time.
Well, the cool thing is when you don't have that,
then what?
Then you gain 3 life because you're behind and you need time to play something.
Yeah, I guess.
Or you add mana and you just play something gigantic.
I guess the knock that I have on it is the 3 life is fine if you're behind. It's okay. It helps a little bit, but it's not getting you back into the game. And if you've got 5 mana, turning my land into a thing that makes an additional 2 is like, whatever. I'm not putting a big value on that. I like creatures get +1/+1 and gain trample for those games where it's kind of like we're at parity or whatever, and I can slam this and just be like, boom, attack you for 1 billion, or start drawing the cards. But the scenarios where this really is good are the ones where you're like vaguely ahead or at least have a board state already, which I'm not saying that makes it a bad card. But I do worry a little bit about the times when I'm behind.
Well, when you're behind, gaining 3 a turn is a pretty significant margin. Like 3 a turn is hard to kill someone with. How much are you getting attacked for? Like if you play this,
you're right, like 5 or 6 or something. Yeah, right. That's true.
Then they hit you for 5, then you gain 3 life again, and you played something else that turn. Like you can really stabilize. And when you stabilize, this gives you a lot of ways to win the game, whether that's draw extra cards or play things. Also, the mana ability is the weakest of them, but when it's good, it'll also be really good. It'll let you play an 8-drop or play 2 spells in the same turn. So true. I think this is like an A-. I think that this card is really going to lead to some really interesting games and also ones that you will tend to win because you get to choose whatever you want, and there's a lot of good options here.
I want to give it a B. And the reason I want to give it a B is because you don't get to just choose whatever you want. If you did, then I would be right there with you. But like, if I have one creature with power 3 or greater, I cast this and they go, okay, kill it. Right. I'm looking at my board like, okay, I guess I'll just gain the 3 life and take a bunch of damage. And then I'm kind of like begging the top of my library to hit me with something. And that's the part I don't like.
I think this just does enough in different spots that
I agree
that it's going to justify itself pretty easily.
Okay. That's a cool card too. I mean, I'll certainly be slamming it. Glorious Sunrise, B, and A- from Luis. Next is Avabrook Caretaker. This is a 4 green 4/4 human werewolf. This one's mythic rare. It's got hexproof. So 6 mana 4/4 hexproof. Okay. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. Okay. That's pretty sick. It also has Daybound, transforms into Hollowhenge Huntmaster, which is a 6/6 hexproof werewolf that says other permanents you control have hexproof. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. What?
Yeah, this card's nonsense.
Can you say Prince format?
It's an A+, and maybe, this and Cemetery Desecrator, I think, are my 2 picks for the best cards in the set. Like, first of all, this puts 6/6 worth of stats immediately, as long as you have any other creature. And then, if you ever flip it, they just lose straight up. But even if you don't, like, how are you beating this card? It's really hard to beat. You can't remove it. Like, this is kind of where hexproof is like kind of at its worst, where it's like, oh, good, we get to play against this. So yeah, I'm A+ for Avabrook Caretaker.
I hate this card.
Yeah, obviously.
I hate that it has hexproof.
That's only because you enjoy good games of limited.
That's right. They're holding that against me again. A+ for Avabrook Caretaker. Next and last for green is Cultivator Colossus. This is 4 GGG, so 7 mana, for a star mythic rare plant beast with trample. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Wow. So likely and limited a 7/7. Trampler. And then when it enters a battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. Sad. That's probably not going to happen very often, right? Like you have an extra land in hand after you hit 7 mana.
I mean, the dream is you play this with like 2 lands in hand and then you play like 3 or 4 lands. You rattle off a bunch in a row.
Yeah.
The reality is you play this as your last card.
Right. Definitely.
So I probably like B- on this. It's basically a 7 mana, 7/7 trample that has like the ability to go a lot bigger, but I don't think is going to happen like all that often enough for you to feel like this is a bomb.
You know, you compared a card earlier to Colossal Dreadmaw, 4GG 6/6 trample. I could make an argument that Colossal Dreadmaw is better than this.
Yeah, I think this is better, but I agree it's close.
Yeah. And so, that puts me, B-, C+ range for Cultivator Colossus.
Sure.
That brings us to white. Our first white card is Hopeful Initiate. It is white for a 1/2 human warlock at rare. It has training, and you can pay 2 and a white, remove 2 +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control to destroy target artifact or enchantment.
That's a nice one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a 1 mana 1/2 training is a card you already are going to be pretty interested in your white aggro decks. And then the fact that it actually lets you play this like little sub game of like, all right, I'm going to remove counters so that I can retrain back up and get those counters back again. Mm-hmm. There's a decent amount of enchantments and artifacts running around. So like B for Hopeful Initiate, solid little card.
I was going to say C+, but maybe it's B-. Yeah, it's just okay. Next is Lantern Flare. It's 1 and a white for an instant at rare. It says Lantern Flare deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control. But you can cleave it for white, red, and X. So then it says Lantern Flare deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life.
I mean, this card is good. Like, you would put this in any white deck because it's going to be 2 mana to deal 2 or 3 damage and gain 3. And then in a red-white deck, it just becomes a very flexible removal spell.
Super cool design, right? Like, because if you're just kind of doing the white creature-based thing, then Lantern Flare is probably better than the cleaved version anyway, right? But then if things don't go super well for you, or if you get into the way late game, and you happen to have access to a red mana, then you can cleave it and probably get an extra couple of points off of it than you would have from your board.
Yeah, I like both sides of this.
I like B for Lantern Flare.
Yeah, I would give it a B, and then in a red-white deck, it's probably like a B+.
Yeah.
Like, it gets a little bit better in red-white.
Oh, man. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, back in action. One of the most annoying creatures ever printed. 1 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human soldier at rare. She's got first strike, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. This is the bane of every blue cube player's existence.
So I believe I've played upwards of like 150 games where Thalia's been in play. I believe 5 of those games she's been on my side. Like, totally. That's my guess.
Yeah. This is the card that they made for people that hate people who love blue, hate value, and hate all good things in life.
Yeah, I actually think Thalia is a fantastic design because the people you're describing, we get catered to plenty in Magic, and Thalia is a pretty good way to punish people for not playing fair. So I kind of like it. But in limited, fantastic card. It's not as devastating as a constructed. It's not the same as like I've got Thalia in play against your Storm deck, your Grixis control deck, and you're really struggling. It's more like I'm playing a 2 mana 2/1 first strike. I probably don't have that many spells in my deck. So this is a 2 mana 2/1 first strike with upside that's going to kind of annoy the opponent. And Thalia is good. B+. I mean, sometimes this will just be a 2 mana 2/1 first strike, which is great. Yeah. And sometimes it'll really, really mess up your opponent's plans. So
that's right. And as Luis alluded to, remember that it does affect you as well. You have to pay the extra. Don't forget.
Yeah. I guess the worst case is when you have Thalia in play and it actually like is bad for you, but that doesn't happen all that often.
Right. And you have some agency over that. And like you said, the fact that you're the one with a 2/1 first strike for 2 sort of sets that parity in your direction. Voice of the Blessed is next. It's white for a 2/2 Spirit Cleric. It is rare. It has to have flying, right? With wings like that. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 4 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 10 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has Indestructible.
Great. Now that it's a 12/12, it's Indestructible.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, but Voice of the Blessed is a decent payoff for the life gain decks. Obviously, like, it's not going to be very good if you're not gaining life, but if you have a couple ways to gain life, it's likely worth playing this. You won't always be able to cast it on turn 2, but sometimes you'll play it on turn 6 and, attack with your 2/3 flying and give a lifelink, get a counter or what have you.
Is it like a build around for the life gain style deck?
Yeah, I would say it's like a build around like B.
Yeah.
Like, it's a solid build around.
I like build around B for Voice of the Blessed. Next is Faithbound Judge. This is 1 white for a 4/4 Mythic Spirit Soldier with Defender, Flying, and Vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, put a judgment counter on it. As long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. It also has Disturb, and it disturbs for 7 freaking mana. That's 5 white, and it becomes Sinner's Judgment, which enchants a player. It's a curse, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, so that's me, right, as the controller, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. Then if there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. And
this card's a really cool design.
That's cool.
And I think it's quite a strong card. So you played as a 3/3 or 3 mana 4/4 flying defender, and if your opponent's an aggressive deck, they kind of have to get rid of it because it'll block everything.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not an aggressive deck, they're like, okay, sure, I'll ignore it. But then in 3 turns, it can just start attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, they can't ignore it. And then later in the game, you just pay 7 mana, and you're like, all right, you've got 3 turns to win the game, or you just lose. I think that Faithbound Judge is really, really good.
That's insane.
It's a 3 mana 4/4 flying with significant upside. Like, I think it is better. It's a
3 mana Sarah Angel.
Yeah, the fact that it can't attack for 3 turns obviously is going to make it a little less appealing for like the very aggressive decks. But I think this is a stronger card than 3 mana 4/4 flying. Like, not by a lot, but I think it's something that you could make that argument. So I give Faithbound Judge an A.
Me too. That's awesome. I love that card. Also, like you said, very cool design. Catilda Dawnheart Martyr is the next card. It's 1 white for a star legendary creature, spirit warlock at rare. It's got flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires. And its power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. And it does count itself, right, as a spirit warlock. Yep. So you get in 1/1. It also has Disturb for 3 white, where it becomes Catilda's Rising Dawn, which is a legendary enchantment aura that enchants a creature. And the enchanted creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires. And it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments.
Strong card. I mean, by itself, a 3 mana 1/1 flying lifelink with pro vampires, which is funny, isn't that impressive. But getting to flash it back to give that aura to something is. Yeah. And then it's just not hard in white to end up in a spot where you get, you have one other thing in play and it's great.
It's funny because you make it into 2/2 and it's really impressive. Like, it's already, like you said, 1/1 is like, nah. But even if you just get to 2/2, it's already like, dang, that's a good card.
Yeah, doesn't need much work. So I like B+ for Catilda. And then if you're good at enabling it, she does move into the A range. But like in white blue spirits, she might just be an A,
Yeah,
but
agreed. And really, like, seriously, we would probably play Catilda's Rising Dawn, just 5 mana enchant creature that gives it flying, lifelink, protection from vampires, and +1/+1.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So yeah, I like B+ for Catilda, and easily moves into A if you can support it. What does Savior of Allenbach do?
This is a 1 white for a 1/2 human soldier at Mythic. It has training, so whenever it attacks with something bigger, you get a +1/+1 counter. And when it trains, you can exile up to 1 other target creature from the battlefield or a creature from the graveyard. And then when it leaves the battlefield, you put all the exiled cards onto the battlefield under their owner's control. So it's kind of like Angel Serenity's text, if you remember that, where what you end up doing with this is you either exile one of their things in play, like one of their blockers, and then when this dies or gets bounced, they get the blocker back. Or you exile one of your creatures from the graveyard, and this puts it straight on the battlefield, actually, not even back to hand when this thing goes away. So pretty flexible there, where you can either use it aggressively to push their blockers out of the way, or you can just, stock up on cards under this from your graveyard. So now they're in a situation where if they kill, exile, bounce, anything, then you get like 2 creatures back.
That's awesome, especially because it's pretty easy to imagine that you would get like 2 trainings out of this on a pretty normal curve out.
Yeah, and obviously if you have this in your deck, you might even try to go the extra mile to figure out ways to get even more out of that. So
yeah,
I like A for Savior of Wallenbach. I mean, it's vulnerable for about a turn, and then after that, it's just you don't really like lose out regardless of what happens.
Straight up must kill. I like A for Savior of Wallenbach as well. Next is Wedding Announcement. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment. It's rare. It says at the beginning of your end step, put an invitation counter on Wedding Announcement. If you attacked with 2 or more creatures this turn, draw a card. Otherwise, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Then, if Wedding Announcement has 3 or more invitation counters on it, transform it into Wedding Festivity, which is an enchantment that says creatures you control get +1/+1.
This is a cool card. Every turn you're getting either a card or a 1/1, which again they do beginning of end step, so no waiting around here. And then after 3 turns, you just get a Glorious Anthem. Your creatures all get +1/+1.
Sick.
Yeah, great card. A- for Wedding Festivity / Wedding Announcement. Like you're not really losing out, and you don't get a choice of what you get, but you can decide whether or not you want to attack versus not. If you really want a 1/1 instead of a card, for example, then most of the time you'd rather just have a card, I would imagine.
I think so too. Even with the synergy with the other side, those cards can turn into
this
creatures.
Is just so cheap.
Yeah, I love it. Wedding Announcement, A-, really cool. Welcoming Vampires. Next is 2 and a white for a 2/3 flying vampire at rare. Whenever 1 or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Dang, don't sleep on that. That's powerful.
Fantastic card. It's just a 3-mana 2/3 flyer that draws you a card every turn.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it'll feel like that a lot of games.
Also, what you kind of want to do with this is play it on turn 5 and play a 2-drop and then draw a card immediately.
Yes. To get your value.
Yeah, that would be optimal. But I like A for Welcoming Vampires.
I do too.
You're never losing out on this card.
I mean, this is also enter the battlefield. So like if you have a token maker, just spits out a small token, boom, you get your card back. You don't even have to pay anything. Like, wow. Yeah. I would just say A for Welcoming Vampire. Like, it's just going to be a card draw engine. It also happens to be a 2/3 flyer. That's insane. Yeah, Cemetery Protector is next. It's 2 white for a 3/4 flash human soldier. It's Mythic Rare. When it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Boy, these cards are not safe in the graveyard. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
So 3/4 flash for 4, and then assuming you chose wisely, you can start getting 1/1s whenever you do stuff.
So is a good baseline here. Like you flash this in on turn 4, you eat up one of their, their 2-drop or their 3-drop. You hopefully have something to exile. Let's say there's a creature card in the graveyard. You exile it. And then when you cast a creature spell, you get a 1/1 human. Yeah.
And no, this doesn't let you exile another thing when you attack. So it's, you kind of got to make your choice and stick with it. But most of the time, if you flash it in on turn 4 to ambush, you're not going to get much value out of the exile, but you're just going to live with the fact that you got, a 2-for-1 right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And then later, if you can choose a type that you have a lot of cards of that type and probably get 2 or 3 1/1s out of the deal. So solid card. I would give this an A-. It's good card early, good card late.
I was just going to give it an A. Like, I think the upside of the 2-for-1 at a relevant stage in the game is really great. And then this, like, if you can nab a creature with this, just every creature you cast, as long as it's on the battlefield, just spits out 1/1s, is like, it's going to add up really fast. I like it for Cemetery Protector.
It's pretty good, yeah.
What does Hallowed Haunting do?
This is a 2 white for an enchantment at Mythic Rare. and it says, as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. And whenever you cast an enchantment, create a white spirit cleric with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of spirits you control. So an enchantment build around, but you need kind of a lot of enchantments to make this work. Because you're going to make like a 1/1 to start with and then a 2/2. And it does count your other spirits, but yeah, this looks like another build around like D. You're just never really going to get there. Yeah. It's basically enough is kind of my guess here.
The cool card for Constructed. By invitation only is next. It is 3 white for a sorcery. It is rare. It says, choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. So this is kind of interesting. You can make each player... Basically, you can wipe the board if you want, but there may be use cases where you don't do that. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Yeah, it's a kind of cool take on a Wrath where it's a Wrath, but has a little bit of upside when you have more creatures than them. Like if you have 5 creatures and they have 4, you're just like, all right, each player sacks 4 creatures.
That seems actually like a reasonably relevant upside for limited.
Yeah, I think so. It's a 5-mana Wrath, which is fine. Like that's already decent. And then, I like 5 a lot more than 6. Just that extra turn matters. And then when you are in a spot where you're like, you really curved out, you could use this to like wipe the board except for your 5/5 and get the last 5 through. Or, they have 2 creatures and you have 4. You just make each player sack 2 creatures. So you're kind of always down a card in that. But you are wiping their board and opening up the door to an attack. And sometimes there's weird stuff like they have 2 creatures and you name 1 or something, right? Like they have 2 3/3s and you have a 5/5 and a 2/2. You could just say 1. Now they have a 3/3 versus your 5/5. There's a lot of play to the card.
That's pretty cool.
By invitation only a B+.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. What about the case where they have 15 creatures?
Yeah, then you're stuck.
Then it sucks. Next or last, I should say, is Sigarda's Summons. This is 4 white for an enchantment. It's rare. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have base power and toughness 4/4, have flying, and are angels in addition to their other types. This is like a +1/+1 counter angel overrun.
Yeah, it's obviously a build around, but if you can reliably get 2 creatures with counters on them, this card is worth it. If 0 or 1, it's just not going to be worth it because spending 6 to upgrade 1 creature isn't good. But spending 6 to upgrade 2 creatures is pretty good. So looks like a build around C. I don't think you're going to end up with enough counters most of the time to make this that great of a card.
Right. It's interesting because what it means is it doesn't matter what the counters are on. Right? Like you could have 2 1/1s with a +1/+1 counter, but you're hitting for 10. Like you play summons, bam,
because they get the counters on top of them.
Right, because it just doesn't matter after that. Yeah, I like build around C, like you said. It will just end the game the turn it comes down, but you actually have to enable it. Okay, let's get to the gold cards here. There's a few of them. First one is called Dorothea, I'm going to say, Vengeful Victim. And this is white-blue for a 4/4 flying legendary spirit at rare. 2 mana 4/4 flyer, no bigs. Whenever Dorothea Vengeful Victim attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. Okay, well, there's the rub. But it's also got Disturb for 1 blue-white, and it becomes Dorothea's Retribution, which is an aura that enchants a creature. The enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, create a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice that token at the end of combat. It turns your creature into a Geist of St. Traft?
Yep. And, starts out as a 2 mana, 4/4 flyer.
Kind of a removal spell or a 1-hit for 4?
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's actually funny that a defensive deck is probably a little more likely to want the front side because a 2 mana 4/4 that dies when it blocks is still, it still trades off for almost all their creatures. And then the backside is a lot less impressive in control decks, but if you can put the backside on an aggro card like a 1/1 flyer, you could put a lot of pressure onto them. I'm not really liking the sum of this card. I think it's probably like a C. I think it's going to be overdrafted. I can tell you that much. Definitely.
And I agree with you. There are good high case scenarios, but I think on average it's going to be a C. Let's take a look at Runo Stromkirk. This is 1 blue-black for a 1/4 legendary vampire cleric. What is blue-black vampire doing here? This thing's rare. It's got flying, so 3 mana, 1/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, up to one target creature card from your graveyard. Put up to one target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. Sure. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Runo Stromkirk. He becomes Crothis, Lord of the Deep, which is a 3/5 legendary Kraken horror with flying. And whenever Crothis, Lord of the Deep attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead.
So the joke here is that you play this late in the game and put a 6-drop on top of your deck, and then you know you're going to flip him. So there's not, you're not going to flip Runo very often without doing that kind of shenanigan. Yeah, I would say most of the time this is a 3 mana 1/4 flyer with a lot of extra extraneous text, because most decks are going to have like 0 to 1 6-drop, maybe 2 6-drops in their whole deck.
Right.
But it is kind of nice that you can just put a creature on top if you have like a good creature in your graveyard that you want to summon for some reason.
Yeah, the combo here is with Hullbreaker Horror, which gets both, right? It's 7 mana. So it flips it, and it also is a Kraken. So when you get to do it, it kind of does its thing. The only other 2 are Biolume Egg, which is a serpent, and also becomes a serpent, and then Rot Tide Gargantua, which is the zombie Kraken. Thanks, producer Jeff, for the hookup there. He did a quick search for us there. So yeah, the combos in this particular set aren't like amazing. I mean, again, you can just throw a 6-drop on and just sort of get to Kraken, if you will, but I don't know. This seems like one of those things that like there's some dreams to be had, but they probably won't happen very often.
Yeah, I would still give it a B, because I think a 3 mana 1/4 flyer that lets you choose to draw your best creature next turn is already a pretty solid card. And then every now and then you're going to get to live the whole dream or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. B for Runo Stromkirk. Next is Anye, Maid of Dishonor. This is 2 black-red for a 4/5 legendary vampire rare. Whenever Anye, Maid of Dishonor, and or one or more other vampires enter the battlefield under your control, create a blood token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So what does this do? Whenever it and one or more other. Okay, so basically when this or another vampire ETBs for you, you get a blood token.
This one suffers from terminal magic ease. Like what they're trying to say is you make a blood token whenever a vampire comes in, but it's only one, no matter how many come in at once. And it's just like,
right. I'm just,
they just make it incomprehensible.
Right. Okay. I've needed the assist there. It's also got the activated ability to and sacrifice another creature or a blood token to have each opponent lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. Wow. So 4 mana, 4/5 with that activated ability and the ability to generate blood tokens. That's, yeah.
And comes with a blood token up front too.
Yeah.
I think it might be an A+. Like,
that's really great.
How many games are you going to play this on turn 4 and just kill them with it? Or like you play this with 6 mana late, they're at 10, end of their turn, you drain them for 2, you untap and just throw your whole board at them.
Right. And and we've been talking a lot about like, hey, if you have a blood payoff, meaning that if you have a way to use blood tokens other than just their activated ability, then all of a sudden things get crazy. That's this. I mean, your opponent can't race it. They can't block it.
Yep,
it's also huge as a 4/5. So yeah, I like A for Anye, Maid of Dishonor, maybe even up into the A+ range if you're in the full on blood token thing. This could be a big one. Olivia Crimson Bride, the star of the show. 4 black-red for a 3/4 flying haste. Legendary creature, vampire noble at Mythic Rare. Okay, so they didn't push the stats too hard. But whenever Olivia Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains, when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. So when she leaves the party, they leave with her. But come on, this is just like she hits a battlefield with haste and then brings back something that's tapped and attacking also like that same turn.
Yeah, and the drawback of when she dies, it dies, isn't going to matter if A, they can't kill her, or B, they're forced to block and trade off for that creature right away anyway.
Yeah, or you just kill them that turn. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, this is another A. Olivia is just such a beating.
I'm glad that they powered her up since she's kind of the focal point, but like that's just another like kind of stupid card for limited. All right, what about Halana and Alina Partners?
This is 2 red-green for a 2/3 human ranger at rare with first strike and reach. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Halana and Alina's power. That creature gains haste until end of turn. So a very strong value-generating card because it stays at 2/3 first strike reach, which is a pretty solid little defensive option, but it immediately puts 2 +1/+1 counters on one of your other creatures, and then also gives it haste. So like you play this on 4, turn 5, you play a thing, you get to attack with it and buffed. And also if you happen to buff this, the power of Halana and Alina, you're now distributing 3 or 4 +1/+1 counters. So, yeah.
Wait, but you get to play this, immediately put the counters on something at the beginning of combat, jam with that thing?
Yep.
And then the next turn, you can play a new creature, put 2 +1/+1 counters on that, and attack with it that turn?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, a very strong card. I would give Halana and Alina an A. Like, Same. Unchecked, this is just going to end the game, and it's really hard not to get at least 2 counters out of it.
Yeah. Wow. Hana and Alina, Partners, A. Next is Torrens, Fist of the Angels. This is 1 white-green for a 2/2 legendary human cleric at rare. It's got training, and whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier token with training. Dang.
Yeah, a little monastery mentor action here.
Yeah.
Perfect for the green-white deck. Like, you play this on 3, next turn you play like 2 creatures and get 2 more tokens that you can then attack as 2/2s probably because they're going to train up next turn. Or you do the thing where you slow roll this until turn 5 and then play like a 2-drop in the same turn as it and immediately get your 1/1 soldier. So, I mean, it's an A. Like in a heavy green-white creature deck, they have to answer it or they lose, and it only costs 3 mana. That's the recipe for an A for me.
Yeah, totally. And you can, like, if I attack with 3 1/1 trainings and a 2/2, they all get a counter, right?
Yes.
Like they don't have to take their training from a specific.
Yeah, as long as you have one creature bigger, look with a greater power when they attack, they'll get trained.
Jeez. Yeah, that's incredible. A for Torrens, Fist of the Angels. Next is Kaya, Geist Hunter. This is 1 black-white for a 3 loyalty legendary Kaya. She's Mythic Rare. +1 ability on the Planeswalker here is creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature token you control. -2 is until end of turn if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control. Twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Until end of turn, I should have said at start. And then the ultimate is -6. Exile all cards from all graveyards, then create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying for each card exiled this way.
Not a big fan of Kaya. Like her +1 doesn't protect her. It's an offensive ability.
Yeah, and you don't even get the permanent thing unless you have a token. Okay.
The -2 requires you to be making tokens to get value, which you definitely won't always have. And then the -6 is fine, but you're just not gonna get up to 6 most of the time. This actually just looks like a D. Like, yeah. I don't think you should put this card in your deck.
I guess we could give it a build around B or B plus if you're just all in on tokens somehow, but I don't. That hasn't been obvious, right? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it looks like Kaya's a bit of a miss, a kind of a constructed build around or something. Next is Edgar, Charmed Groom. This is 2 black white for a 4/4 legendary vampire noble at rare. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. So 4 mana 4/4 that buffs all your other vamps. And then when Edgar dies, return it to the battlefield transformed. Under its owner's control, it becomes Edgar Markov's Coffin, which is a legendary artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink and put a bloodline counter on the Coffin. Then, if there are 3 or more bloodline counters on it, remove those counters and transform him back into Edgar. That's great.
Yeah, Edgar's awesome. It's a 4 mana 4/4 that can never fully die. And then when he's dead, he's making a 1/1 lifelinker. And then when he flips back, now they're 2/2 lifelinkers.
Oh, that's insane. And
Yeah,
how many? It's the third one if there are 3 or more. So you're going to get the 2, then the third. Wow, that's insanity.
Yeah, so you need exile or artifact removal, or just to like kill them before he transforms back. But it's pretty hard to kill someone through a 1/1 lifelink every turn.
Yes.
So,
He's the groom. He's marrying Olivia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Wow.
Yeah, so I would give Edurne, yeah.
Yeah. What about Iruth Tormented Prophet?
This is 1 red-blue for a 2/4 human wizard at rare. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. This card's really funny. It's a bit of a risk if you play it too early, because you might just get in a situation where you don't exile things you can play. And then you just kind of got to skip your draw step. But later in the game, I mean, this is better than drawing a card. When you have 5 mana in play, you're going to get 1 card out of the deal most of the time. And often if you hit like a land and a spell, you'll just get 2 cards.
Right. And that's going to be an engine that's going to be very, very difficult to beat. I would certainly be willing to risk playing this card, and I would just play it out a little later. Like, you just don't have to turn 3 it unless, you need to for power and toughness reasons. Yeah,
it's not even the worst to turn 3 it, because if you flip a land, you're already breaking even.
Totally. So. It's actually hard to completely miss, right? You need to, like, you play it on 3, on 4, you need to hit like 5-drop or something weird like that.
Yeah. So pretty big fan of Iruth Tormented Prophet. I would give it a B+. It's like a 3 mana 2/4 that like is akin to drawing an extra card every turn, which your opponent's going to have to deal with that.
I like that. And I like the stats too. 2/4 is actually pretty beefy for a blue-red card. Yeah. Next is Old Ruststein. This is 1 black-green for a 1/4 legendary creature, human peasant at rare. Whenever Old Ruststein enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, create a treasure token. Okay. If a creature card is milled this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If a non-creature, non-land card is milled this way, create a blood token. Yeah. So this is just happening like right when it ETBs, and then every upkeep you're just spitting out a little bit of value.
Yeah, I like it. You're for sure getting something every time.
Yeah, I like that. That's really cool. I think, probably depending on the time of the game, the insect is probably the number 1 hit, then you want the treasure, then the blood, but like those vary greatly based on the board and the presence and everything like that. The turn you play it may be better to hit the treasure token to kind of turbo you out.
Yeah,
blood
I think
token
most of the time
seems the worst.
Early, you want to hit treasure.
Yeah.
Because you could just play a 5-drop on turn 4 or whatever.
Right.
But you could play a 6-drop on turn 4 if you get real lucky. But you double mill. But yeah, Old Rutstein's great. I mean, yeah, maybe late in the game milling yourself becomes a concern, but that doesn't really happen. And you're getting value every turn. And it's cool that depending on what's going on, you might actually want the blood token, though that's the overall weakest of the 3, I think, just in a vacuum. So I would give Old Rutstein a B+. Pretty happy with this card in my deck.
Yeah, this is a good little value engine. Old Rutstein gets a B+. Next is Odric Bloodcursed. Oh no. What happened to Odric? Did he get bitten? This is 1 white red for a 3/3 legendary vampire soldier. When Odric Bloodcursed enters a battlefield, create X blood tokens, where X is the amount of abilities from among Flying First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance found among creatures you control.
I'm not a big fan of Odric.
I really don't like this design.
Yeah, I've heard also that people are really disappointed by Odric's turning, but mostly you're going to play this as a 3 mana 3/3, and maybe you'll get 1 blood token, and sometimes you'll get 2.
Yeah, no, come on.
This looks like a C. Like I would just put it in my red white deck, but it's just I'm not thrilled about it.
Yeah, not thrilled about it. C trending towards C+ if you run hot for Odric Bloodcursed. It feels like a bit of a miss. Grolnok the Omnivore. Look at this guy. 2 green-blue for a 3/3 legendary frog. And it's rare. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Okay, well, that counts him. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. Whoa.
So before you get too excited, I want to point out that when this leaves play, you can no longer cast those cards. Which I think is a pretty severe drawback.
That does hurt. So you play it, it survives, you go attack with it. It survives combat. You exile 3, or you mill 3, and any permanents that way get exiled, and then you can play those.
Yeah.
It still has a lot of upside, right? Like in a permanent heavy deck, you hit a land and a creature, you can be like, play the land, play my creature. Like that's pretty insane.
But it has to survive though.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mill it on ETB. It's only attacks.
Yeah, I'm giving Grolnok a C. Like,
yeah, you're right.
It's fine to put in your deck because it's a 4-mana 3/3, and that's not terrible. But like, a lot of the stars kind of have to align for this card to work out.
Yeah, it's just going to be I triple block it every time, right? And then in which case it's gone, and then the cards are gone, and you don't get to do anything. Okay, C for Grolnok. So close, buddy. A couple of artifacts and a couple of lands, and then we'll be done. Artifacts are Investigator's Journal. This is 2 mana for an artifact clue. It's rare. Investigator's Journal enters the battlefield with a number of suspect counters on it equal to the greatest number of creatures a player controls. And then you can pay 2 mana, tap it, and remove a suspect counter from Investigator's Journal to draw a card. And then it is a clue, so you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So how many does it get? Number of suspect counters equal to the greatest. So like if somebody has 4 creatures, it just has 4 things, and you can pay 2 mana every turn to remove a counter to draw a card and then eventually cash it in.
Yeah. Slow,
but that's got a lot of potential for a lot of cards.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like 2 mana. Like imagine if it comes into play with 2 counters on it, you're getting 3 cards out of the deal, but you're investing a bunch of mana. You probably need a specific deck for this to work. You can't just put this in an aggro deck and expect it to do a good job. And certainly, you need to like stabilize the board, but it does let you pull ahead once it does. I'm just increasingly suspicious of card draw effects like this. I think it's probably going to be a C, but the games in which it plays out, some games it's an F, you could never use it. And some games it's like an A because you'll draw 5 cards off it and your opponent will just feel like that you have complete inevitability.
Yeah, I'm going to go C+. I do think that you're going to end up getting, 3 cards off it most of the time. And it has a ceiling of like 7 cards or something.
Right.
So I'll go a little higher, but I agree with you. These type of cards are sus. Dollhouse of Horrors is our last enchantment, or I should say our other enchantment. It's 5 mana for an artifact at rare. 1, tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a token that's a copy of the exiled card, except for it's a 0/0 construct artifact in addition to its other types, and it has this creature gets +1/+1 for each construct you control. It gains haste until end of turn, and you activate the ability as a sorcery only. So you get a creature, but the first one's a 1/1 version of that creature. And then if you do this again, you get another creature, but now they're both 2/2 versions of their individual types, of their individual creatures. And then you can kind of keep going from there.
And you get a little bit of value if you can like exile creatures that has, like keywords or ETBs or anything like that. Like Death Touch is pretty nice on this, or a nice ETB. I think this card's okay. In a creature heavy deck, like imagine you both have played some creatures. No one's like obviously dying, but you've traded off some stuff. Turn 6, they go play this, make a 1/1 that like, has some effect or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then next turn I'll make a 2/2, and the next turn I'll make a 3/3. And now they're all 3/3s. They all are in lockstep. And then of course, if one dies, it shrinks all the rest of them and all that. But getting a second go around on all your stuff, especially if you have this card, you're like, all right, I'm going to put in like, Death Touch creatures or ETBs at a high priority.
Yeah.
And then if you self-mill, it can do some good stuff. I think this is like kind of like a build around B where you really need to like elevate the creatures in some way. Again, Death Touch is the biggest one. ETBs are another big one. You want stuff like that. You don't want to just be turning your 5/5s into 1/1s. You want to have like good value texts to really take advantage of.
And I would add that I think you need critical mass of creatures. Like I believe if you can just activate this 3 or 4 times in a row, I don't care what the creatures are, right? It's just like, I've got 3 3/3s, go ahead. And then the next turn you like activate, got 4 4s, attack with them all. They also get haste. you can just run your opponent over. Because remember, the dust will have settled by this point. They probably don't have much removal left. They probably don't have, you traded off your cards for something. I like it in a controlling, either a mid-range deck that's leaning towards control or just a straight up control deck, but more in the mid-range one because you're more likely to have enough creatures to actually make this thing go. Self-mill also helps. I'm interested though. I like build around B for Dollhouse of Horrors. If you enable it, it'll win you the game.
Looks like a fun card too.
Yeah, it's also cool. Okay, so we've got some lands. What did they do with these? Shattered Sanctum. This is the black-white version of the rare dual cycle. Shattered Sanctum enters a battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. There's also blue-red, black-green, white-red, and blue-green for all of these.
Yeah, it's all the enemy color lands, and these are all C's. Like, you tend not to take them over like C plus, good cards that you're happy to put in your deck, but they're better than replacement level cards because making your mana better is solid, and these effectively come in untapped. It's really hard to get screwed on these cards in limited.
Mm-hmm. But they're C's. And then our last land is Voldaren Estate. It is a land that is rare. It taps for colorless. You can tap it and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only spend this mana to cast a vampire spell. And you can pay 5 mana and tap it to create a blood token. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each vampire you control.
So the question here is, would you play this in a non-vampire deck? I think if I thought my mana was good enough, which most decks means like, if I'm a 2-color deck with only a couple double color cards, I might be interested because 5 tap, put a blood token into play is kind of nice. But yeah, no, I don't even think I would play this in most non-vampire decks. In vampire decks, I'd always play this though, because it'll add mana enough of the time that you're not really paying the cost of having a colorless land. And sometimes it'll be like 2 tap, make a blood token, which starts to get pretty efficient.
Right. And the reason I like that, and I agree with you, by the way, is because that deck can also take advantage of blood tokens. I'm assuming that just a blood token in a random deck is an okay thing to have, but not something worth like bending your mana base for. Where if you're playing a vampires deck that can actually like sacrifice those blood tokens to pump up their team or to get value or whatever, then that's different. So I like it in vampires, and I think I would start off by not playing it in non-vampire decks. And until somebody says, hey, this is a blood token set and you need these things even if you're not the vampires deck, that's when I would change over and run this in non-vampire decks. But as such, it's like a build around, and I'd give it like a C+. I mean, it might even be a B-. Like, this thing really doesn't ask that much of you. You can cast all your vampire spells, and like you said, it could just start pumping them out in the mid to late game for cheap.
I mean, it's possible in a black-red deck, this is just, you'd play this without the blood token ability, depending on what your creature bait count looks like. Probably not, but it's possible, which means that, of course, once you add that ability in, you're pretty happy with it. So, yeah, I like Voldaren Estate at like C+. Just save this for your vampire decks, basically.
There you go. And that's the last card for us to cover here on our Rare and Mythic Rare review. Luis, we may have a print set on our hands here. There were some real bangers there, and I'm curious to see when we actually play the set if it feels like those are as good as they seemed on paper here, because I'm a little scared, man. I mean, there's a bunch of those that are just like, kill this or you lose in like a couple turns.
Yeah, it does seem like that there is a very high amount of A's being given out. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Yeah,
we'll have to see. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of LR. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us. We really do appreciate it. I want to mention our sponsor channel, Fireball.com. Make sure that if you want to get Crimson Vow now, you can head over there and pre-order. You can also check out their single selection that I mentioned before in the marketplace. If you do pick up anything, if you do use the affiliate code LR, I do appreciate it. Show is also brought to you by FTX. That's the place to go for all of your digital asset needs. If you're looking to get into cryptocurrencies, NFTs, that type of stuff, and you're curious about it, FTX.us in the USA and FTX.com outside is a great place to go. But remember, there is risk associated with it, and you want to consult a professional financial advisor before doing investing of any kind. Also, we want to thank everybody over on the Patreon for supporting us. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Marshall, we're coming up on my favorite holiday of the year.
Well, Halloween? No, that was last week.
No, that already passed.
Thanksgiving?
Yep. There you go. It took
somehow missed.
Thanksgiving is my absolute favorite holiday. And, we're going to have some folks over for Thanksgiving this year. So I've already begun trying to figure out my menu plans.
Ooh,
so
what are you thinking?
It's tricky. So there's a couple factors. One is that given that we've got Santi now, I'm really I don't have quite as much bandwidth to devote to it as I would in your normal year, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at a couple ways, and I kind of wanted to see, what do you think is if these are an EGA for Thanksgiving, an ethical gray area? Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to order a pie, which that's easy. That's, I think, pretty normal as outsourcing your desserts.
Are you going to gold belly it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, then it's definitely in the clear.
But the question is, what about sides? Because I'm considering getting pre-made sides for a couple of the options.
Oof. Yeah, I don't like this.
Yeah, is that?
The way I see it is this: you've got Santi here now, and you need to set an example for Santi. And I don't think this is the way that you bring him into the world. You don't show him how to act like an upstanding citizen by ordering sides. He'll know, this will get back to him when he's 10 and he'll look at you like, I thought you were perfect. And then I found out that you ordered sides for my first Thanksgiving.
I hate to break you, but well before 10 is when they stop thinking.
Okay. Well, you got to protect it for as long as you can, Luis. So no,
I think I'm going to do a meat main course. And generally, it's not turkey. I just don't think turkey's that good. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to make mac and cheese. I'm already kind of locked into that. And I might make a salad because I have a good watermelon feta mint salad.
You're pretty far down the sides road here already. What are you thinking of outsourcing?
And then I'm going to make stuffing because I have the request to make stuffing. But I was thinking of what if I outsourced maybe the mashed potatoes? Those are pretty labor intensive.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I guess you could get away with that. Mashed potatoes really aren't that hard though. Yeah, but
they kind of take a while.
Can't you have Naya smash them up? She'll go nuts with give her the the potato smasher thing and just say, go ahead.
Oh man, I remember trying to help doing mashed potatoes as a kid. It did not work out.
All right. Well, you do not have my support.
Okay. Well, I had to have you weigh in. I'll run the final menu by you, and you can kind of weigh in at that point.
Sounds good.